say a little bit about what we're hoping to accomplish tonight here at the conference. We have a great panel and a great selection of very experienced cybersecurity professionals, and also some cybersecurity professionals who are new to their career, who are going to share their stories and information about what it's like to work in cybersecurity and why a career in cybersecurity is so important. There are many different positions and career pathways. Sometimes when we hear the term cybersecurity, we just think of one thing that maybe we've seen on TV or whatever, but there are lots of different career paths that you can take, and we hope to explore some of that tonight. We normally would be meeting in person for this event, but of course, because of COVID, here we are on Zoom. But perhaps that has allowed some of you who are from further afield to participate. Now, I'm assuming at this point in the pandemic that many of you are familiar with Zoom, but just in case you're not, I just want to highlight a few things. So we will be recording this session. You would have had a pop-up window that showed you that we are recording this session, and that way we can share it with other students later on. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there is an opportunity to change the way that the Zoom presentation appears before you. We also, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A section, and you are welcome to put your questions in there for the panelists. If you have a specific question that you want directed to a specific person, please add their name in along with your question so we know who to direct it to. We're going to try our best to get to all the questions that we can while we're live. If we can't, then it's possible for you to reach out to our panelists by LinkedIn. They're going to be putting their LinkedIn URLs in the chat, so you have an opportunity to reach out to them after if you have an additional question. So there's also a chat feature at the bottom that you're welcome to share comments with each other, and we're also going to be sharing some links in the chat. There's some there already that are resources for you about cybersecurity careers. And we're going to be getting started here very quickly. I just want to do a quick review of the agenda. So we're going to start with our public sector panel, followed by a career journey presentation by one of our cybersecurity professionals. And then we're going to break into a Q&A for 15 minutes. So any questions that we're not able to get through during the panel, hopefully we'll have some time to answer some of those during the Q&A. And then we're going to go into our private sector panel and do the same thing again. It will be followed by a career professional who's going to talk about their career path, followed by a Q&A. And then our third panel is a really interesting panel made up of recent graduates from UVic and representatives from the school district in Victoria. And they're going to talk about what it's like graduating from university and trying to start your career in cybersecurity. I'd also like to let you know that ISACA is providing 5 $100 gift certificates at the end of this Zoom. When you log out, you will be sent a link to complete a survey, and all of those who complete the survey have a chance to win one of those $100 gift certificates, and there are 5 of them. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce you to the president of ISACA, the Victoria chapter, Josh Stevens.
Hey, Tara, thank you very much for that. Hello, everybody. My name is Josh Stevens, and I'm the president of ISACA Victoria. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to welcome you to ISACA's Victoria Springboard 2021 conference. Over the next 3 hours, you're going to hear from some amazing people. These are leaders in our field and experts in the area of cybersecurity. And they're also just all around good humans who believe so much in cybersecurity as a career path. And so much in you that they've given their time to come and speak to you this evening with the hope of either opening your eyes to an entirely different field that you hadn't considered, or perhaps confirming something that you already knew, which is that cybersecurity is an amazing choice and can provide an incredibly fulfilling career that will allow you to have access to cutting edge technologies, provide phenomenal job security. In fact, right now there's a global job gap of about 4 million people. And it'll also allow you the opportunity to make some pretty good money, seriously good money. So The median income is about $85,000, and there's people that are making much more than that. So it's a very good thing. I don't want to steal the speaker's thunder, as there's no way I can do it justice in the intro, but I can promise you that you're going to learn a lot. My one ask of you as attendees is to please keep an open mind. There's a common misconception that you need to be a certain type of person, I guess, to be in security, and that's just simply not the case. Security professionals come from all walks of life, all ages, all ethnicities, all genders. And cybersecurity is pretty cool because it also welcomes all types of people, artists or engineers, athletes or writers, musicians or mechanics. You all think differently and you all see the world in a different way. And because of that, the way you solve problems and the way you approach things are different, and you all have strengths that you can bring to this field. The last thing that I wanted to mention, and I do think it's pretty important, is that this is one of the only communities, one of the only fields I can think of where you're going to find so many willing professionals to help you get started. They'll encourage you to grow and ultimately help you to succeed. It's really an amazing community, and tooting the BC horn, especially here in BC, I'm pretty proud of the community we have. But I think you'd be shocked if you reach out how willing people are to help you. Give it a try, and you'll see what I mean. Use LinkedIn and send a note. Reach out to me. I think I speak for all the panelists when I say reach out to anybody on the panel. You, as the attendees at this event, are the next generation of cybersecurity talent, and we are here to help. And there's so many different things you can get into, and not all of them are IT technical, or as Tara said, the fending off cyber attacks in a high stress environment. There are positions in security awareness, research and development, marketing, sales, myself, so many others. So I guess before we get started, what we're hoping to do from the ISACA board and those that are involved is to get a little bit of an understanding as to who's here and what stage of your journey you're at and where you're from. So we're going to put up a couple of quick polls to get an idea of that, and then we'll be handing it back over to Tara. So thank you very much again, and hope you enjoy the evening.
Once you've answered the polls, we're going to show you the results so you get an idea who is participating here tonight. And it'll also give us an idea where you're from. Stan, can you show the results once you have them there? Very good. So a really nice mix across, we have high school students, we have students from college and university, and we also have existing professionals who are thinking about transitioning into cybersecurity. And you're going to hear from some of our panelists who did exactly that. So they will shed some light on what it's like to do that, to transition from one career into a career in cybersecurity. We have a lot of people from the island. Nice to see some people from Vancouver and outside of BC. Very good. And that's what Zoom allows us. So really appreciate that. Very good. So we have a lot to cover. So if our panelists for the public sector are ready, I'm going to start introducing you. And we'll talk a little bit first about what public sector is in case people aren't familiar with that. What that is, that basically are all the services that are provided by the province, things like your healthcare and your BC government and federal government as well. So, and we have representatives from all of those here tonight to talk to you about what cybersecurity is like in the public sector. And it may be something that you don't think of very much. We often think of cybersecurity attacks. What we hear of on TV is often about private corporations, but we don't think about how important this is in the public sector. And our panelists are going to share some light about that. So I'm going to start by reading their bios, and bear with me if I stumble over some of the words. I have to tell you, cybersecurity has a lot of S's in the field, so bear with me, okay? So first I'd like to introduce Gary Perkins. Gary Perkins is the Chief Information Security Officer for the Government of British Columbia. As the Executive Director of the Information Security Branch, Gary is responsible for providing cybersecurity services in support of the province, so big job. He has more than 18 years of experience in information technology, risk management, and cybersecurity. Prior to joining the BC government, Gary worked in the private sector as Chief of Staff for Security at TELUS, and earlier in his career led teams responsible for incident response, operations, delivery, and architecture for both corporate and managed service, there we go, there's those S's, managed security services customers there. A certified information systems security professional since 2004, Gary also holds an MBA from Simon Fraser University's Management of Technology program. And I think you'll hear from our panelists tonight that many of them have additional certifications and continuing education beyond their degrees. This is a real common thread in cybersecurity, so they stay up to date. Next, I'd like to introduce Sherry Rumbolt. Sherry is the National Security Policy Advisor for the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces at the Directorate Information Management Security. She advises on policy, contributes to strategic objectives, and coordinates with stakeholders and service providers at all levels of D&D's national security program to assist with the safeguarding of the information and information technology assets. And you can imagine that the D&D would have a lot of those. Sherry is a certified information systems security officer and a certified information security manager, and was just recently named as one of the top 25 women in defense and Canada's top 20 women in cybersecurity. What an honor. Sherry is very passionate about empowering women to have an equal role in cybersecurity. Please, if we were all together, we would be clapping. Welcome to Sherry. And our final panelist today for the public sector panel is Renee Pelchier. Renee is an Executive Director, Information Technology Audit at the Office of the Auditor General of BC. And for the high school students online, if you're not familiar what the Auditor General does in the province, that may be something that you want to Google after. They look after a lot of different things that you don't even think about. Renee is responsible for overseeing the portfolio of IT general control audits for financial statement audits, IT performance audits, and the office's data analytics practice. In his role as Executive Director of IT Audit, he is a key contributor to the Office of the Auditor General's strategic direction for the use of IT in audit, as well as the audit of technology in government, and all government ministries are using technology today. Renee has over 10 years of experience working in legislative audit offices in Alberta and in BC. He has led performance audits in areas including healthcare and cybersecurity. In addition to his work in the legislative audit offices, Renee has several years of experience providing information risk and technology consulting services with large professional services firm. He also has 13 years of experience with the Canadian Forces Reserve, so there you go, and in communication and information security roles. Renee holds a number of internationally recognized IT certifications as well, including Certified Information Systems Auditor, Certified in Risk and Information Systems Control, and Certified Information Systems Security Professional. So welcome to all of our panelists. We're going to go through some questions and would welcome you to unmute yourself now so that we can have a great conversation. So Gary, I'd like to start with you. So can you tell us a little bit about your office and the number and types of security positions that are in your office, the type of roles that are in your office?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me here today and letting me talk about my favorite topic in the entire world. I just want to start by saying I have the best job in BC It's challenging, it's rewarding. I get to help people, I get to make a positive difference. And those who know me, the two fastest ways to get my attention are threats to critical infrastructure and helping to develop the next generation of cybersecurity talent. And in fact, I heard something from one of my students. I also, if that's not enough, I teach at UVic as well, their privacy and security course. And one of my students helped me realize that what we're really doing here is um, realizing that the next generation of cybersecurity talent is going to save the world. It's not over dramatized, folks. So in my department at the BC government, we have 56 positions in my branch, ranging from security awareness, where they focus on educating employees about cybersecurity, to vulnerability and risk management, where they proactively find and address the vulnerabilities in systems before the bad guys find them. We also have security consulting and architecture, identity and access management, our investigations and forensics team, which is much cooler than CSI, and security operations, where we prevent, detect, and respond to cyber attacks to the tune of 372 million unauthorized access attempts daily, or 4,306 a second. Again, it is a challenging position. But there are also over 24 positions in ministries throughout government dedicated to information security as well.
Very good. Thanks so much, Gary. Was that 372 million attacks a day?
I don't use the word attacks. They are unauthorized access attempts.
Okay.
I know that a lot of other folks would call them attacks. But yeah, that's per day.
That's a huge volume. That's just mind-boggling. Wow. Now, Sherry, so what is cybersecurity like at D&D? Whoops.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. Somebody else is not muted, I guess.
Yeah. Stan, can you please mute Salome? Thank you.
And I hope my dog doesn't bark. I'm just letting you know. So she might get a little angry as we go along here. Sometimes she thinks other people are in the room.
That's okay.
Yeah, cybersecurity at National Defense is kind of a fun day, and it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? So we have operational missions all across the world, both in Canada, internationally. Even though we have COVID, we're still moving ahead with all of our operational missions. We have ships at sea. We have folks deployed overseas in a variety of different roles. And we also have people in many positions in NATO and all around the world working with the Five Eyes and our other nation allied areas. So I think that it's a fun day. You just really don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think for us, it's a lot about keeping the lights on, making sure that the information that that's in our purview and under our mandate is protected, and that we actually don't have any type of major issue in which we put people in harm's way. And that's exactly what we do every single day. And there's a huge team of people that do that. So within the directorate, we have almost identical to Gary, actually, around 59 dedicated professionals in the directorate itself, but we're the L0 of the command. So the higher level national areas. And then we have what we call L1 commands across national defense. And there's quite a few of those. And then we sort of delegate all the way down security, right down to a unit level. So there's many hundreds of security professionals throughout national defense that are helping us on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we're protecting our humans.
That's incredible. I had no idea it was so broad. So does the local D&D office, your office, do you look after the ships when they're deployed at sea, when any of the security issues when they're at sea? Because I would imagine that would be challenging.
Well, one of the level ones is the RCN, the Royal Canadian Navy. And even though I'm actually in Victoria, I work remotely for at the national level at this point. But again, the Navy has all of their own security practitioners. We help provide policy and support to them through a variety of different roles. But yes, they have security professionals on board the ships. Gary knows that he got a chance to do a little tour. And those security professionals on board are there to be kind of the key folks that are the information managers, and to also help assist assist in any type of situation that occurs when the ships are out at sea or in deployed operations. So every operation essentially goes with security professionals. A lot of those, depending on the circumstances, are they're in uniform, they're military members, but there's also a wide variety of military and civilian employees that are all security practitioners working together hand in hand on a regular basis. So it's really a huge community, just like I think any other organization or corporation.
Yeah, very good. Thanks so much, Sherry. Now, Renee, what is cybersecurity like in the Office of the Auditor General?
So we play a different role from Sherry and Gary. They're the front line. They're the operational folks. They're the ones on the pointy end of the stick. We get the easier job. We sit back and we come in and we look at what they're doing as far as best practices for cybersecurity and IT security, and we try to give them advice. It comes in the form of public recommendations, which causes a lot of consternation a lot of the times, because we are going in, finding problems with how they are managing IT security and cybersecurity, and then we're making that public. So there are risks associated with it, and we often have to balance the needs for public reporting against the needs of helping the departments improve. One of the really great things about working with the Auditor General is, and so there's Auditor General's offices for each province, and then federally for the whole country. The great part of that community is we get to go and look at what is happening in cybersecurity across the entire government, whether it's provincially, and we even do some national collaborative audits and stuff like that. So we get to go and look at all the cool stuff that Gary's doing, all the cool stuff that Sherry's doing, and honestly, if you're a good auditor, you're taking this perspective of how do I help you improve? How do I help identify risks that you can work on? And it's not just a gotcha trying to make things look bad, but the variety of different things you get to look at. It's just since I've been at the office here in BC for the last couple months, we've released 2 reports, one on IT asset management, which is a fundamental piece of cybersecurity. You got to know what you have to be able to protect it. And we've also released another report on the cybersecurity of medical devices. And I'll throw both the links to both those audits in the chat so you can see what an audit report from our office looks like. But constantly get to look at different topics, constantly get to work with different people. So the variety of work you do is always engaging, and it's always interesting, and it's always exciting.
Very good. That sounds really interesting. And yeah, I think people would be really interested in reading some of those reports when we're finished with this. So Gary, I'd like to circle back to you. So when you are hiring for positions in your unit, I know, often students are really focused on their technical skills when they're in school and learning. But, more and more we hear from employers that soft skills are important, and there are other things that employers are looking for from their recruiting. Can you speak a little to some of the things that you like to see in applications when people are applying?
Yeah, and this could be pretty challenging, right? Because what we really need in this space is a 4-year degree in cybersecurity that takes into consideration that it's more than comp sci or engineering, but that's what a lot of folks will pursue who are going after roles in security. But really important to realize, like Josh said, that security professionals really do come from all walks of life. We need everyone, we need all perspectives, and consider that my undergrad degree is in psychology and criminology, right? So whereas IT technical skills are, a strength in some areas, they're not as important in others. So consider that in my security awareness team, for example, having strong communication skills is critical. And in fact, what would make you a fantastic applicant for a role there is experience or skills in education and training, and not so much the ability to decipher all the 3-letter acronyms we'll throw your way. But if you do want to hit the technical skills, I thought it was important to just give folks an understanding of some things that they could pursue there. I do recommend familiarizing yourself with operating systems other than Windows and getting a little bit of experience or familiarity with networking. These days, you don't really need expensive gear, and you can use virtual machines or even Raspberry Pis or other recycled machines to get some additional experience you wouldn't otherwise. But yeah, I guess I would end on just saying that, look, you can have genius level intelligence, but if you can't communicate it to somebody, they'll never know.
Very good. A follow-up question for you too, Gary. Are there any, so I would imagine anyone, and this would apply to all of our panelists, for jobs in security, do candidates have to go through like a security clearance themselves?
And again, it depends on the rules, the roles, sorry. Certainly at my level, I'm cleared only to federal security level 2, which is secret. You know, Sherry's credentials would make that look tiny by comparison. So yeah, certainly a background check and often a criminal records check, because if you consider that you're often in possession with very sensitive information. And so we need to make sure that the people that are in those roles are at the high standards and ethical obligations.
Yes, that makes sense. Thanks so much. Now, Sherry, how about you? Are there different things that you're looking for when you are recruiting? Any other considerations for candidates?
I mean, Gary covered a lot of it very, very well. So it's the same sort of thing. Like, I mean, in our, even in the directorate, we have a very similar security program makeup as what Gary has at the provincial government level. And that is that we have education awareness, and we have advisory services, incident management, cloud security, very big now. We're starting to build a whole cloud security team as well. So there is a lot of mixture between, we do a lot of risk assessments and what we call the authority to operate systems in national defense. So there's many, many, many networks. I mean, I can't even tell you how many we have, 500 plus maybe. So each of those networks have to have an authority to operate. So we go through a very rigorous approach for risk management and assessments. So there's a lot of what I call techie skills, and some jobs do require that. And then there's other skills that are really much soft skills. You know, for instance, like I've been working on policies and writing national policy for the last 6 months, and people that know me know I'm a talker, but I'm probably not necessarily the best person to be the writer. But again, too, like I have hundreds of people at my disposal to assist me with writing very, very necessary policies. A lot of times when you're writing, you have to have a skill in writing. Like you have to probably be somebody that has some sort of background in, you know, writing or some sort of creative arts. It would be wonderful. I would love to have someone at my disposal at this point to be doing that kind of thing. You know, again, too, so those are like a lot of skills, but you also need to have some sort of technical background. And of course, understanding the culture is so important. I can't stress enough how important it is that, you know, we have a lot of people that come into different environments, government, private sector, but understanding what that is and what that means and how you integrate into that culture and understand that culture makes it so much better for everybody to be successful. So again, gain mentorship there. So if you're interested in, for instance, coming on to work at National Defense, start reaching out to folks that work at National Defense and get a bit of an idea about what that culture might look like. Same thing I would suggest for any other organizations, because it gives you a better idea about what actually happens on the inside. I mean, you know, it's so important. And for us, I mean, of course, everybody knows that you need to have a certain level of security clearance. So in most cases, we expect, in order to even get onto some of our, what I call mainstream systems, you need to have enhanced reliability at the federal government level, and then we go up from there. So depending on the information that's in your care and the information that you actually need to know to do your job, it changes. And again, too, depending on the level that you need to be at to complete your duties every day, your clearances will sort of go up and down. And again, too, like we have high level clearances. Sometimes you're only read in for a few months and then you lose that clearance when you no longer have a need to know. So just because you get on the inside of national defense doesn't mean that you necessarily will have some of the highest clearances that's known out there or not known. So
Yes.
you know, good for folks to know. And of course, there needs to be certain citizenship or permanent residency requirements as well.
Right.
So for national defense, a little bit more rigorous. Again, there's a little bit more of a process, but I think it's also a wonderful learning opportunity.
Yes, it sounds great. Thank you for that, Sherry. That's wonderful. So Renee, same question for you. When you are hiring, what are is there anything that you also are looking for? Because your office is a little bit different than what Sherry and Gary are hiring for?
Basic entry level generally in the IT area is a 4-year diploma in computer science or an IT related field. More and more as the technology evolves and the complexity of the systems that we're auditing evolves, we're needing people with more and more skills. So looking forward, I'm often looking for people that do have some amount of operational skills. It's very easy to go out and find a standard, whether it's an ISACA standard or another standard, and pull it off and say, here are all the controls you have to have implemented on your network to monitor for penetration attempts, and just use it as a checklist. But the reality is you need to understand what's happening. You need to understand what they're doing on the operational side. And if there's a gap, you need to be able to have a conversation with people and figure out what is the risk and what do we need to recommend. And having that level of operational skill or experience really helps us to be able to get to good recommendations and not just theoretical checkbox textbook recommendations, which is as Sherry and Gary will both tell you are the worst thing on the planet to try and deal with, especially when we come back and try and follow up and say, well, you didn't do it. So we need to get better recommendations, and we need to do that by having people with the right experience.
Yes, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. That makes
the
a
other
lot of
piece,
sense.
because we're constantly looking at different topics. I'm looking for people that have a lifelong commitment to learning. So people who are pursuing other certifications and a broad range of certifications. The core IT security ones like CRISC and CISP and CISO are kind of the benchmark. But we're always looking for people that have different certifications, whether it's in privacy or with different technology. So we have that broad base of knowledge, and we know people that are committed to learning and can learn new things on the fly. We're always going into new environments and have to learn things as we go. And like Gary said, the last piece is that communication piece. All the work we do has to be reported publicly. And it's always a written report. So we have to be able to write in plain language and write in a way that we are communicating highly technical issues in a way that is understandable by members of the Legislative Assembly and members of the public. So that the ability to communicate clearly and concisely in writing. And we also give presentations at public accounts committees and stuff like that. So we have to be able to explain all this stuff in a compelling way orally as well. So it's that communication piece. Like Gary said, you can do all the great work you want. If you can't communicate what you're doing, it's just not any good. So that communication thing is so important.
Yes, that makes sense. I think that's one of the big differences between public sector and private sectors. Public sector, there is this accountability back to Canadian taxpayers, right? Whether it's provincial or federal. And there is a bit of a political level in there too, where you also have to, in your case, reply to, to the Legislative Assembly. Whereas private sector, the companies are responsible to their shareholders and to their customers more so. They're not really responsible to the public as a whole. But someone may challenge me on that too, I think. So we did have a question come in. What programs do you recommend taking after a beginner tech diploma? And again, I think this might be difficult to answer given that there are so many different career pathways in technology. Gary, it looks like you may have responded to that question as well.
Yeah, it really depends what you're interested in. I kind of focused on the certifications rather than assume that everybody wants to go and pursue a comp sci degree or engineering. I was just looking for ways to signal to employers that you really are interested in a career in cybersecurity and manage to differentiate yourself a bit. But I will caution folks about what I said there. There are a number of certifications out there. Some are vendor specific, some of them are agnostic, but some of them are entry level and some of them are more difficult. You do not want to turn yourself off this field entirely by tackling a CISSP right away. That is a recipe for failure or disaster. Warm up with something that is a lot simpler, a lot easier, like a Security Plus It is much more consumable, or maybe the ISACA, like the CSX. And again, there's different flavors of this stuff. Do you want to be a practitioner hands-on, or do you want to try something that doesn't put you in harm's way responding to cyber attacks and things like that? One thing to understand in this field, there is something for everybody. There are so many different roles out there. There's even research and development. So for the folks that do want to hide well away from the front lines, that's one way to do it. Maybe the other panelists have other information to add.
Yeah, does Sherry or Renee, do you have anything additional to add to that about certifications?
The one thing I would caution when you're presenting yourself to an employer, if you have a long list of certification that just kind of never ends, for me, it's kind of a turnoff, because it seems like you're just someone who's collecting them and doesn't really have the experience to back it. So be very specific in which certifications you're going after, and make sure they're high quality certifications, well recognized within the industry, and ones that are hard to get and demonstrate that you have the knowledge and the experience. And keep your list focused to, when you're putting your resume together, keep the list of certifications that you have focused to the job that you're applying for.
Very good. We have time for a quick poll. We thought we would just check in with our participants to see what they think would be one of the most common cyber threats to the public sector. And then I would like our panelists to weigh in after, once we see what they say. So Stan, if you're able to bring up the poll, there we go. So what are the most common cyber threats currently facing provincial and federal departments? We'll just give that a few seconds to populate. And I'm sure we haven't covered all of them in that question, but it will be interesting to see what the results are once we have them. And so Stan, if you're able to show those, that would be great. Aha, theft of personal information in databases. So panelists, how did they do? Gary?
Well, you can count on me for an opinion. I think the problem comes back to the person who created the poll in the first place. There are many more options, as you've alluded to. And if we talk about by volume, it's going to be the immense amount of scanning and people poking at things, as well as distributed denial of service attacks. This is when people try to overwhelm the bandwidth that you have by sending more. It's really a math game. If you're capable of receiving 100 megs and they send 10 gigs, you are going to lose. So by volume, that's the most common. But what we normally talk about with people is related to one of the items that is on that list. And it is just shocking, the just sheer volume of email-borne malware, like a ransomware or extortionware. So when you get an illegitimate email and you click on that suspicious link or attachment, that's one of the ones that is most common and is the fastest way to put your organization at risk when you click on that. I'll stop there in case others want to speak.
Great. Sherry, how about for D&D?
Yeah, well, I entered with the majority, but again, too, it's the same thing. Like, I mean, we're some of the things that we're always thinking about is kind of insider threat, if you will. I mean, there are opportunities in which people are still succumbing to everything that Gary just talked about. So education and awareness is so key and so important for our employees because you can have the best tools and the best technology and the best cool systems out there and everybody monitoring things, but we still have folks that sometimes are succumb to phishing attacks and whatnot. So still so important to make sure that user awareness is there.
Very good. And Renee, how about from the Office of the Auditor General?
Definitely defer to Sherry and Gary. They're the ones who see the attacks coming in, and they know exactly what the biggest threats are. But like what we see from being reported from departments is it's a lot of the ransomware stuff. It's a lot of someone lost their laptop and it had a database on it. It's a lot of stuff like that. most of it comes down to human error, like Sherry mentioned. And users are the weakest link in security. People just make mistakes by accident. Canadians always want to be helpful. So if they get a phone call, they're trying to help out the person on the other end. So they do things that they shouldn't, and then bad things happen.
Yeah, thanks for that. So we just have a few minutes left in this session, but we are going to bring everybody back for a Q&A, but we have a couple of quick questions I'm going to try to get through if I can. So what is the typical salary range in the industry in BC or Canada? And I know Josh talked about 85,000, and I'm sure like with any salary, it depends on the job and how much, how much your seniority and experience. But is that anything, are there stats about that you can talk to?
I think that's a pretty solid number to start with. I mentioned in the chat, I responded to that question as in a previous organization I was at, I found that most of them fell between 60 and 100K. And again, it was based on experience. So you may not get 85K right out of the gate when you graduate. You're going to need to get some experience. And there's those junior level roles, the entry level ones, the intermediate, and then the expert roles. But I guess it would be fair to say that if you're not paying your senior level staff in excess of 100 grand, then you can be prepared to lose them.
Yeah.
To somebody who will, right? You're going to lose them to Amazon.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I think Gary said this to me before, and I think we talked about it. And that is that if you work for the government, you're not there for the money. You're really there because you have some sort of passion, or you're loyal, or you really, really care about giving back. Private sector certainly make a lot more cash than the government. But again, too, I find that there's a huge trade-off in reward. So for myself personally, I find it's really rewarding to be able to work in the role that I do and what we do every day. I feel that it's such an important mission. So, again, I think federal and provincial government as compared to private sectors is a lot less. But again, I think for us, we have what we call CS, computer systems. That's if anybody goes to our government website for the federal government and you actually drill down into CS, we start at CS1 and we go all the way to CS5, and then we go to executive level after that. So again, you can the pay scales are publicly available, widely published, and most entry level is CS1. But what we find is that those roles are really, we don't really typically hire a lot of those roles, but we do bring, say for instance, co-op students or whatnot. They might come in, we would sometimes offer them a CS1. They quickly do move to what we call CS2, which is what I call run of the mill. All of the senior analysts in security work pretty well in that role, and then you get to higher level management as you go up. So that hopefully that helps. But yeah, that's around the number that I would say is pretty normal.
Very good. And Renee, any final comments from you as we wind up this panel?
Starting, like if an entry level auditor, straight out of university kind of thing, would be making around $60,000 a year. As you move up and get more experience, and if you specialize into cybersecurity audit or something like that, you are able to move up in salary fairly quickly. A good cybersecurity auditor is usually making at the manager level once they have some experience, is usually making around $90,000. So they're making good money, and it goes up from there once you get into the executive positions.
Wow, that sounds great. Good reason to study hard in school and keep on studying and being willing to learn new things. So I would like to take this time just to thank our three panelists. We're going to turn off their videos, but they're not going anywhere. They're coming back in 15 minutes to answer more questions and perhaps even have a more candid conversation about what cybersecurity is like in the public sector. So Stan, we will move on to hearing from our career journey presenter, and that is John Eliopoulos. So I'd like to introduce John. John has been working in information technology for about 29 years, but he didn't study IT in university. So this will be really of interest to those students who maybe do not have a technical background and are considering wanting to pivot into cybersecurity. So in university, John majored in marketing and management. And about 3 years after graduating from university, with his career not going the way that he had hoped, John went back to school to study information technology. He worked in the private sector, mostly in the banking industry, until about 2007, first as a Unix system administrator and then in information security for about 4 years. In 2008, John moved to Victoria and started working in a public sector position with Island Health's Information Security Department. And John has been with Island Health ever since. So welcome, John. Thank you for joining us this evening. Really interested to hear about your career path because it was a little different than some of our other panelists.
Thank you very much, Tara, and hello, everyone. Yeah, as Tara mentioned, my career didn't start in IT or IT security. When I was in university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure. Business sounded interesting to me. So I kind of thought maybe that's the way I wanted to go. In university, during my business courses, marketing sounded interesting. So I decided to major in marketing and see where that led. Unfortunately, after graduating, I found out the marketing didn't really as I thought it would. I kind of looked around, tried different things, and found myself in restaurant management. And I tried that for a couple of years. Again, after a couple of years there, wasn't going the way I wanted to. I wasn't quite happy in what I was doing. So I was looking around to see what else I could do. And that's where I started thinking in the back of in my history, I've always liked computers. I had an interest in it. So I thought maybe that's the way I should go. So I did a little bit of research, found a private school that allowed me to learn what I needed to do in IT to get into that career in a shorter period of time than going back to a university or college. So I ended up taking a 5-month immersion course that taught me the basics of IT, programming, systems administration, all of that stuff. And then when I graduated from that school after 5 months, I found my first job in IT, which was as a Unix systems administrator at a law firm. And that started my IT career. And I'll tell you, I've never looked back since. I finally found something I really liked doing. And I spent several years. I went from the law firm to the banking industry and then spent most of my time in the private sector. I ended up working in the banking industry. So worked for TD Bank and Bank of Montreal and Royal Bank at some point during the 1990s. And then after about 8 years in that area, I decided to try consulting work. So I left my job, found a contract, and started doing contracts and consulting for about 1.5 years. And it was one of these consulting positions where I was a Unix administrator, but I was working in the security department at Bank of Montreal. And that's where I got my first taste of IT security. And I talked to some of the people working there doing the actual security work. And the more I heard, the more I got interested. So when that contract was over, I decided to look at how to get into the security field. And that led me to my next position, which was as a Unix administrator at Scotiabank, but in their security department. And that kind of led me on my path into security. And at Scotiabank, I was there for several years. I started as a Unix administrator, but learned about other areas in security and slowly transitioned into security operations. And security operations is kind of a fun area because that's where you monitor all of your security systems like intrusion prevention systems and the like, and your emails coming in. And that's where you try to catch and stop anything that looks like it might be an attempt to get in, to get access, whether it be by hackers, whether it will be through spam and phishing emails or whatever. That's the operations side. And I really started enjoying what I was doing there. After about 6 years there, though, that's when I started thinking, I need a little bit of a change now. I was a little bit I wanted to change my focus and leave the big city and try going somewhere which is like a smaller municipality or something that's a little smaller, quieter pace. One of the things about the private sector, and it was alluded to before, you do make a little more money in the private sector, but you also have a lot more expected of you. The private sector IT and IT security is not a 9-to-5 job. You're going to work extra hours. So you make a little bit more, but you generally have to work a lot more for it. In the public sector, this is generally speaking, there are exceptions everywhere, but in the public sector, I find they allow you more of a work-life balance. So even though it may not be even in the public sector a 9-to-5 job, you do have more of a balance and you are offered more of a personal life than you get in a lot of private sector positions, especially private sector in the big city like Toronto, which is where I was. So that's what led me to Island Health and my job here. I started here in 2008. It's about 13 years ago. I started in the operations side, basically responding to issues and alerts, helping respond to and stop any types of malware coming in or phishing and spam emails and the like, responding to any intrusion events or any attempts to get unauthorized access. But over the years that I was there, my job actually changed quite a bit. I transitioned more into an advisory side, where I started having more of a focus around basically security threat risk assessments, things like vulnerability management, being an advisor to the rest of the organization. Some of the things I was doing, for example, was if a new system came in or we had major upgrades, I would start or conduct an STRA, which is a security threat risk assessment. The purpose of an STRA is to look at what they're doing, look at what they're implementing, look at the details, including technical details, and look at processes. And the goal here is to identify what kind of risks may be introduced by this upgrade or this new system, and then make recommendations to mitigate them. And it's not always possible to mitigate every single risk. And that's where another purpose for these STRAs is to identify what the risks are that you cannot mitigate and present those to the business owners or the people and the executives that are responsible for this system, so that they understand what kind of risks there may be in these new implementations, and are they worth accepting if we can't mitigate them, because what we're getting out of the system is more important and is a higher priority than what the risk may represent. So sometimes you may need to accept certain risks, but that's where you also implement monitoring around those risks so that you can identify when it might be a concern.
That's great. And so, John, you've actually provided a really good kind of stepping stone career pathway, you know, how you started in marketing and, you know, had recognized that you were miserable working in that and needed to make a change. And I think sometimes when students are in school, you know, you study what you think, we were talking about this, you study what you are interested in at the time, but what you're interested in changes as we go through our career. And in your case, you got exposed to a type of work that you weren't even aware existed, and that led you on your career path.
Yes, that's actually a good point. And I like to emphasize that a little bit. For everybody here, especially those that are in university or high school thinking of careers, don't be afraid of changes. You may come up with, you may decide to go into a career path that you may find after you're in there, it's not quite what you wanted, you're not happy in it, whatever. That's okay. Nobody, especially at that age, in your late teens and early 20s, you're not going to know what you want to do for the rest of your life. So you should expect that at some points you may want to look at transitions. And especially in IT and information security, it is very easy to transition because there's so many different areas you can get into. So if you're going down one career path and you find you're not quite happy where you are, you can transition and look at other areas in IT security. And your experience in the area you're in is going to help you in these other areas.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. And so, um, did you have any pushback when you wanted to make that change from marketing into going back to school to learn something different?
Yes, I did. And I had some people that thought I was nuts. Uh, but I knew what I wanted, and I had confidence in myself that once I made the decision and went through this, I would be okay. Plus, it also helped the time that I was still living with my parents, let's be honest. And that kind of helps. If you're on your own, it's a little more difficult. So you might have to find other ways to get to where you want to be. For me, quitting my job and going back to school was a little bit easier. But for some people, if it's not, and not going back to school isn't an option, you can go through other areas like taking these other courses. And especially today, there's a lot more options today than there were 30 years ago. There weren't courses, there weren't certifications like they have today that give you that ability. So it's a little bit easier today. It's actually quite a bit easier today to transition because there's so much available that helps you learn what you need to.
And we only have a few minutes left, John, but I think too, even though you started off in marketing and business and made that transition to IT and then cybersecurity, some of the things that you learned in your first post-secondary educational experience have probably helped you in the work that you're doing. Like when you were working with the banks, you probably had a bit of an understanding of business from your business and marketing background.
Yes, that does help. Yes, some of the knowledge I had there did help, especially in the banking industry where I sometimes had to deal with executives. So it kind of helps to understand their language, which I found I did understand a little bit better than some of my coworkers.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I think we're seeing a lot more in careers the value of cross-discipline skills and how that can be really beneficial in your career. Um, and also, too, you did you have any mentors along the way that helped you as you were making these sort of different changes in your career?
Unfortunately, no, I did not. I did to a certain extent, actually, especially once I got into island health. My manager, who's now my director, he helped me quite a bit in learning the healthcare field. So he was a mentor to me. It helped me learn and understand the healthcare field better. But before that, no, I used to be really shy when I was younger, and it's kind of hard to get those interpersonal skills and stay and find the mentors. I wish I had gone a different route and looked and seeked out the mentors. They do definitely help, and it would have made some of my transitions a little bit easier.
Yeah, very good. So I think at this point then, John, what we're going to do is we're going to transition into the Q&A session where we can carry on this conversation with the other panelists. And we do have a few other questions that have come up in the chat, but I would actually like to talk with everyone about this thought of mentorship and the value that it is in your career. And I think regardless of whether you're in high school or college or university or already out working, finding a good mentor. And how do you find a mentor in cybersecurity? Someone who's going to be a champion for you and maybe answer some of those questions, especially when there are so many career paths. Like, where do you begin? And a mentor can really help you navigate all of that.
Yeah.
Gary, do you want to talk to that a little bit? Just because I know that you have worked with students and you're also teaching at UVic, so you have a lot of experience with students.
Yeah, I'll keep it general. It's something I want to build on something that Josh said previously. I am not aware of another industry that will help you get a leg up like this one will. I don't know of any other one that's out there. I don't think that nurses all meet together off hours and help mentor and coach each other and provide development opportunities after hours. In this one, it will. I don't know why that is. I have some theories. One is I don't think that the people that are in this field are worried about you taking their job because there are millions of job openings. Maybe they're hoping that you'll get interested and get into security and help them out. Those are my two theories right now, but put this to the test. If you reach out and start to get involved with ISACA and either you're volunteering or their student memberships are like next to free, if not free, their events certainly are. Start interfacing with them, join whether it's a Discord group or Slack, and you're going to find when you reach out to people that they are willing to take an interest in helping you get and progress your career. And then when you start to build that relationship, can you imagine the impact that it has when you've demonstrated your interest in this field, you're interested in developing yourself professionally, technically, and then you tell your mentor, I'm going to pick on somebody, Michael Argas, he's well established in the field, or Dominic Vogel, who's going to show up later. You're like, I'm really struggling to get a job. Do you mind taking a look at my resume? And then this person goes one step further, as I've seen, and they post your name as looking for a position on LinkedIn. I'm going to tell you, at that point, you are turning down jobs. And the only thing that gets in the way here is if you have a particularly crappy resume. And there's lots of people here that can help you with that. So again, you will not find another industry that helps you get a leg up. I used to say that there's 0% unemployment in cybersecurity. But I'm thinking that the COVID has probably affected the ease with which we can onboard and hire people. And I know that there are some students that are looking for work, including the question that's just been asked about how do I search for cybersecurity jobs? Most of the recruiters are asking for 4 to 5 years of experience, especially with those entry-level jobs. Where do you think the problem really is here? The problem is with the employer and the recruiter that is looking for 4 to 5 years experience for an entry-level position. This needs to change. Anyways, I'll open it up to the other panelists and I'll answer that question.
Yeah, very good. Actually, I was saying that, though, I was on a panel this morning with the BC Tech Association, and that is changing. BCIT surveyed a bunch of employers in Vancouver, and a third of them said that they are not requiring people to have post-secondary education. I shouldn't say that, right? I work at UVic, but they're not requiring that. But that's because there are all these other agencies and boot camps that have come into place that are providing some of the skills. And as you said, as you all have said, there are so many different jobs available. It depends at the level that you're getting into the field, and you can continue with your education as you're going through. Sherry, did you want to say anything about mentoring?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that everything's been covered, but again, too, like I get I think I get emails or something from LinkedIn almost weekly. There's a lot of people lately. I feel really bad when someone reaches out to me and says, something has happened. I've lost my career, my job right now, and I'm looking for something else. And I'm trying to help them find placement in like Toronto or wherever. I mean, you know, we're trying to help each other. And like Gary said, often on LinkedIn, we are trying to help our colleagues out. We want to make sure that everybody's got food on the table. There should not be anybody in cybersecurity that doesn't have a job. It may not be the perfect opportunity for you right at that time, but I always say yes to it anyway, because you are going to learn so much no matter where you go. You're going to learn that maybe it's not for you and you want to move on to something else. But at the same time, too, you're going to learn something very valuable about yourself and then also about the organization. So very key. I mentor all the time. I don't say no. I try to do my best to have time for folks. And I know that there have been people in my life that have really catapulted my career, and they believed in me throughout the years that I was actually trying to do well and to succeed. So I think it's really important for all of us to be that supporting in that supporting role for young professionals, because guess what? We're not going to be around forever, and we need them to step up and help us out, because we don't want our knowledge and expertise to go down the drain either. So it's very important for us to give back.
Yeah, really good points. And for Renee, for yourself with mentorship and networking, because you are new to Victoria, so you're probably building your professional network here in Victoria, but it does sound like in cybersecurity that provinces mean nothing to the cybersecurity professionals are networked across Canada, probably across the world as well, because through conferences and the training that you're doing constantly, that you have a really broad network of professionals in your LinkedIn network, in your professional network.
Yeah, one of the great things about working at the Auditor General's office, like I mentioned, is the community of Auditor General's offices across the country. And there's an organization called the Canadian Council of Legislative Auditors, which is a really convoluted name, but we get to meet with the other IT auditors a number of times throughout the year and talk about all the issues that they're seeing in all the different jurisdictions. So it's a really great way to network with each other. Kind of an exclusive community. You got to be part of a ledge office to get in, but for all the people out there who are just starting in their careers, like Gary mentioned, the ISACA communities, getting involved with those, they're a great place to network and meet people. I think ISC Squared also now has a chapter in Victoria. It's another great organization. When you go and you hear the presentations, do not hesitate to go up to the presenter afterwards and talk to them. They're there because they like communicating with people. They will be more than happy to talk to you. And if you say, hey, can you have is there any way I can get you to have a look at my resume? I can almost guarantee you they'll say yes. If anyone ever asked me, I would certainly say yes. So it's, I know it can be kind of intimidating. The person just gave this presentation on this amazing subject and you want to ask for their help, but they're there because they do want to help. So by all means, absolutely reach out to them and talk to them. Connect with them on LinkedIn afterwards, say, I saw your presentation. I could use a leg up here. Could you give me a hand? And we are really a very, very helpful community.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, that's a really great segue to remind our panelists that if you are open to students connecting with you through LinkedIn, to put your LinkedIn URL in the chat so they can find you. And students too, also at the bottom of the chat, there are 3 little buttons that if you click on that, it does allow you to save the chat for later, and you will be sent a text file basically with all the content in the chat. So it'll have some of the answers and LinkedIn profiles from our panelists. When you are reaching out to them, please do let them know where you met them, because they all do receive a lot of requests every day, as we've heard. So let them know so that they know who you are. Now, panelists, we do have some questions coming in that would like to address. So this question says, you have mentioned about going with the multiple certifications. Going with multiple certifications is not recommended. Instead, have certification along with experience. But it's hard to get a role in security, as a new entry-level position, because they require a lot from new, recently graduated students. So if it's too hard to get in, does the certification play some role in landing, catching the attention of someone recruiting for a cyber role? Who would like to start with that? John, are you doing any recruiting in your position with Island Health?
We are actually, yes. We're recruiting for one position actually, which is the one I recently vacated. So we're looking for a replacement for me in a specialist role.
Aha.
The advisory side. That's a more senior position. And we will be looking for a couple more positions over this, the rest of this year as we are expanding the team. So we are looking at both entry level to senior positions. We still haven't nailed down the exact level they're going to be at, but there will be a couple more positions coming up.
Okay, so people should just keep an eye on the careers page for Island Health. Yes. Gary, did you want to talk about that?
Well, I think your question started out around certifications, and I know what Renee was getting at. We've all seen it. Somebody comes in, their name's John Smith, and I put an example in there, and they've got a CISM, a CISA, a CISSP, an OSCP, a PCI. And it's pretty intimidating when they've got like 87 characters after their name. So I definitely agree with Renee there, but I wouldn't necessarily suppress them from your resume, but I'm a little biased in this regard. I am what some would call a cert junkie. I write certifications on a regular basis. I like the challenge that they pose. I like being measured and challenged, but here's what I like to do most. I have a record of continuous improvement and lifelong learning because of my certifications every year. And I'll tell you, sometimes you can challenge yourself by writing some of the more technical ones and showing that you need a little bit more experience or reminder on the command line because they ask very specific questions about parameters and things. So I enjoyed the CCNA Cyber Ops, which was one of the more recent ones I wrote. So again, I'm a little biased in this. I will say this, and I stand behind this, and you can do the research and check on this as well. If you go out there and you look at all of the positions out there, you are going to find that there are 3 certifications that the employers ask for: CISSP, CISM, CISA. Anybody who says otherwise is being biased by their own affiliations. You can do the research and look at those positions. They're not asking you to have all 3. It's usually that they want one of those 3. If it is something else, you'll find that it is often, it's not a requirement, it's preference may be given to. And I'll end with this. Really what I most feel the certifications are is not necessarily proof or evidence that you're an expert in this particular area, but it is a differentiator. So imagine two applicants or candidates that have very similar experience, but one of them has a certification and the other doesn't. The one with the certification is likely going to get it.
Yeah, very good, very good.
If
So
I
some
could just jump in
sorry.
for a second, I
Yeah,
think
sure.
for especially for new candidates, for someone who's just out of university who may not have a lot of or any certification, they're really relying just on their education. The biggest differentiator for me is the interview. Interviewing is a really difficult skill, and being able to communicate what you know and convince someone that you have learned the content from school, that you are the person that's going to show up and be a good employee in the office place. It's through the interview. So my advice to everyone is go to just blanket out resumes to get as many interviews as you can, because it's a skill and you've got to practice it. Go to interviews you don't want the job for and practice that skill, being able to talk through your experience, your resume, and be able to learn to sell yourself.
Yeah, good point.
That will be such a big differentiator for you when you're going for that job you really do want.
Yeah, very good point. And Sherry, you've probably seen this with the co-op students that you interview at D&D, because D&D is a really strong supporter of co-op students and hires a lot of students every year, every term. And you can probably tell the students who have practiced their interview skills, from those that have not. So that's actually a really good point. There's a couple of people in the chat who are asking where are the three little dots that I mentioned. If you single click on the little chat window at the bottom, it'll pop up on the right-hand side of your screen. And it's in that panel on the bottom right, there are three little dots that allow you to save the chat. Now, we are using Zoom webinars, so maybe this is different than Zoom meetings, but that's usually, yes, I just clicked on it and it says save chat. So that should work for you. So we have a couple of other questions. Here's one. How common is it we just have, oh, you know what, guys, we have 1 minute left, so I don't even think we can launch into this one. We are going to save all these questions though, and if we can't get them in the next Q&A, we will do our best to answer them for you, or you are welcome to reach out directly to our panelists. So I would like to take this time to thank our panelists for joining us. You've provided so much information. I hope students are taking notes, and because there was a lot of information that you provided. And yes, so thank you so much. Hopefully you can stay for the rest as we move into the private sector panel to hear what they have to say about cybersecurity. So thank you.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Very good. Thank you, John. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, everyone.
Very good. So as I mentioned, we are going to be moving into the private sector panel. So private sector, I think our panel members are going to talk a little bit about what that is. And at this point, without much ado, I'd like to start the process of interviewing our private sector panels. So we have Bea Wenzon. So Bea is an antivirus analyst at Fortinet. Oh, sorry, I haven't got my video on, sorry. Bea is an antivirus analyst at Fortinet in Vancouver. Prior to finding her way into cybersecurity, Bea worked in smart greenhouse tech, and that's a whole other area of technology that's fascinating, and in building science research. She earned her Bachelor of Electrical Engineering at BCIT in 2018, and she is currently pursuing her Master's in Computer Science, specializing in machine learning at Georgia Institute of Technology. When she's not hunting down new viruses, you can find Bea knitting, reading, or exploring her neighborhood in Burnaby. So welcome, Bea. I'd also like to introduce you to Eric Turini. Eric is the District Sales Manager for Western Canada at Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Alto Networks is a global company based in Santa Clara, California. His responsibilities include leading a cybersecurity sales team and a team of cybersecurity systems engineers. So looking forward to hearing what Eric has to say about technical sales in cybersecurity. Eric's 25-year career includes roles from system administration and business continuity consulting to a variety of sales, engineering, and leadership roles. Eric is from Calgary, and in his free time, he enjoys exploring the outdoors with his family and friends. So welcome, Eric. Our next panelist is Neil Curran. Neil is Director of Mandiant Consulting, which is a division of FireEye, and FireEye is one of our sponsors this evening, and leads Mandiant's Canada's Strategic Services team. Neil is also Mandiant's Global Cyber Risk Services lead. In his role, he aids companies globally in developing and transforming their cybersecurity programs to better detect, prevent, and respond to information security incidents. Neil is also from Calgary, so we have two panelists from Calgary tonight. So welcome all to our panelists. So you've heard a little bit about what our public sector panelists have said, and very interested in learning about what cybersecurity is like at your company working in private sector. So I'd actually like to start with Bea. So Bea, you've had an interesting transition from electrical engineering into cybersecurity. So can you tell us a little bit about that, the work that you're doing at Fortinet?
Yeah, so I've been working as an antivirus for almost 3 years. The way I like to describe malware analysis, it's kind of like vaccine research for computers. So we come up with ways of detecting computer viruses. And just like with people viruses, computer viruses have variants too. This is actually my main area of work, is being able to anticipate sort of what would be coming out next in the next variant of this malware, and to be able to detect it in a proactive way. And yeah, so just the idea that you don't really have to be a certain type of person to be a cybersecurity engineer, like it's really resonated with me a lot. When I was going through the all-important stage in my life, when I was in high school and like university, deciding like, what do I want to do? I wanted to be a pharmacist. And I found out that healthcare wasn't really for me. So I went into BCIT, electrical engineering, found out I really loved programming. And I thought, okay, maybe I should shift into computer sciences. So I did a lot of work studying embedded systems because I thought that was going to be my pathway. So I started applying for co-ops in building embedded systems, which is where the smart LED greenhouse lighting had come in. And it wasn't really until I was almost graduating when I found out that Fortinet was hiring, and I was able to speak to an AV analyst. And the more that I talked to her, the more that I realized that it would be a fairly easy transition for me to make with my electrical engineering knowledge, since I knew some fairly low-level programming, and it seemed like it just seemed like a really interesting job. So here I am, and now I'm happily employed as an analyst.
Very good. Well, we're happy that you are here with us tonight. Now, Eric, was it you? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Was it you who told me you didn't like programming?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and so, I mean, I used to. I mean, I grew up. I sort of was one of that guy who, you know, my parents bought me a computer early on, and I enjoyed figuring it out and how to break it and everything. And then I went to university and I took computer science. I have a computer science degree. And after about, I don't know, year 3, I really decided, like, I don't really like this that much. But I, you know, I was in it too deep. I went and finished it, but I liked working in computers a lot. And kind of like John, I actually, my first job was as a Unix administrator. So yeah, I grew up on, you know, my first job, I was working on these different Unix variants, Solaris, AIX, HPUX. And and I got a job just as and I was actually at IBM at outsourcing. I was working at Petro-Canada, and I just got exposure to so many different tools and people, and I ended up getting hired by one of the vendors that we worked with called EMC, a data storage company, and then they had me on an airplane traveling all over the world, and I got a chance to see all kinds of different people, companies, everything. Got exposure to so much stuff, and I really enjoyed that part of working for a vendor. And and so I got that time working a vendor and just being able to just see so many things and so many people and different types of experiences really sucked me into the vendor life. And so I found my way through. I got a job as a sales engineer, a systems engineer, did that for a long time. Then I ended up running a system engineering team here at Palo Alto Networks. And then now I've been running for about the last year, I've also been running the sales team as well. And honestly, if you'd asked me when I started my career, if I'd end up being a salesperson, I would have said, no way, I had zero interest in doing that. You never know where this world's going to take you. But I can talk a little bit about really what it means. And I'm really, when I look at everybody here and I look at the world now and in COVID, it actually probably opens up a lot more doors, because remote work really means that there's that many more jobs open to you. And so you can, before you'd be looking at, hey, what job can I get where I live? Now there's jobs all over the world that you have access to and can apply for and can interview for. And they don't really care where you work, where you live anymore. They care about what you can bring to the job and to their company. And so I think there's a whole lot open to all of you. And so I'm really excited for all of you who are on this panel. And I love that you're on this panel, because it shows, or on this sitting here as participants, because it shows you're curious and you're interested. And that's what I look for when I'm looking for someone who's new to this industry. I want someone who's going to be curious, have a desire to learn and be better and keep improving, and to be here, on your Thursday evening to show that you need to learn more about a career here. It really shows so much.
It sure does. That's a real common thread that we're hearing tonight. Now, Neil, how about for yourself at Mandiant? How did your career path end up at Mandiant Consulting?
So I actually started out in biochemistry in university. So I started out there. I planned to be a dentist. So kind of different path altogether. A year in, I realized I really didn't like it. Organic chemistry pretty much left me in the dust, so I had no interest in it. And I actually completely switched over. So I went over to business, wanted to get my BCom. So I've actually got, a major in finance, but I also with MIS, right? So I wanted to have a blend between the two just to kind of better prepare me for the job, the workforce, 15, 16 years ago. I wasn't really sure what I was going to get into. Finance seemed like it was logical, but I always had a bit of a slant into technology. I used to love building websites, all those kind of things before that. So I always had a bit of a foot in there. And then from there, through the co-op internship programs I've had at the university, I actually got into consulting right out of university. And that actually afforded me a lot of opportunities in consulting to kind of learn and get exposure to a lot of broad things. And that, from that exposure, I kind of moved into more wanting to get more hands-on experience. So I actually left and went out to industry for a while and actually, got more exposure. How does it actually work? How do you work through the theoreticals, and what does it actually look like in an operational environment? And then I came back to consulting, just not sure why, but I came back to it just to try something again, and just kind of expand more and more. But there I kind of took more of a exposure approach, getting clients across not just Canada, but working kind of globally as well. Just get as much experience as I could was my biggest goal. So, how do I learn something, but how do I apply it in different contexts, different environments? After that, as I kind of grew and kind of matured, the roles I was looking for kind of changed. I was starting to move into different kind of management roles and things were changing. But as part of it, I wanted to try that same type of experience, but back in industry. So I went back to industry, but it was more in a leadership role to really, learn the mechanics of being in the business. What does it actually look and work and feel like? where you're now leading teams in those different individuals and areas. And then after I kind of went through that process, I found my way back to consulting, but I came to FireEye, more specifically to the Mandia Consulting Division. So I've been here for the last 3 years, building out the whole practice out for Western Canada. But I also have a global role from a risk services perspective. So a lot of the experience I've had and built along the way have really helped to kind of build what I'm doing today. So it gives me the chance to kind of work at clients, globally once again, but also working domestically as part of that too. So it's been a lot of broad experience, but my big goal along the way was, how do I accumulate as much experience to take what I think I know and actually try it out? That was always kind of my big mantra throughout everything, to be able to take my theory and try to apply it. And that's a lot of, kind of what I do today too, from the consulting perspective.
Yeah, very good. Before we go on to the next question, I just would like to take this time to acknowledge that all of our panelists tonight are from companies who have sponsored this event, and this event would not be possible without their contribution. So that is FireEye, that's Fortinet, and that is Palo Alto Networks, as well as TELUS and Josh Stevens, who gave us our welcoming remarks at the beginning of this event, works at TELUS. So thank you all, and to your companies for supporting this event so that students can learn more about cybersecurity. Really appreciate that. So actually, I think I'd like to stop right now and run another poll. And I have to confess, we did get feedback from Gary that the poll probably didn't cover the first poll didn't cover all of the very different cybersecurity possibilities. I have to take responsibility for that. And I am not a cybersecurity professional. I work at the University of Victoria with students who are going to become cybersecurity professionals. So Stan, if we could run the second poll to see what are the common cyber threats currently facing private sector, because this will lead into perhaps where some of the job opportunities might be in the future. So if everyone can just click on that, and then we will show the results to see what everyone thinks is some of the major threats, because our panelists are working with clients who are trying to protect themselves from cyber attacks for sure. So when you've got that, Stan, if you can just show the results, that would be great. And please, participants, there we go. Okay, theft of customer information. Yeah, that's a big one. So Bea, now at Fortinet, one of the products that you create, does it not deal with this?
Yes, yeah. Our antivirus works to be detecting all of these phishing malwares that come in every day. I was actually working on that this morning, and they just keep rolling in, because there is so much of it, and it's a big problem. And especially now, when a lot of people have to be spending time on their computers, working from home, it's just really opened up a lot of doors for social engineering attacks. At work, they do these regular tests with their employees where they send out these phishing test emails
to see if they'll
see if they'll click it. The things that you really have to look out for is the link that you see on the page may not be the one that it will go to, if you click on it. So it's really important to just think before you click. The best firewall is the human firewall.
There you go. Good advice. Good advice. Now, Eric, for Palo Alto, how does this ring? Does this ring true for some of the things that you're seeing in your company?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's any one specific one on there. I'd say it's a little bit of all of the above, but we do see a lot of different threats. You got to be ready for a lot of different things out there, and but when it comes down to it, sometimes in an attack you might see multiple of those things happen, right? They might once they're in and they start exfiltrating data. I mean, the last thing they can do is deploy ransomware as well. So they might do a little bit of everything. We're seeing that right now with the DC police. They've ransomware in the box, but they've got all the data stolen as well. And they're slowly releasing PII data until they get until they get the ransom paid and unlock everything. So there's a lot happening. But the one thing that we've seen some new things, like SolarWinds was a very unique hack. That just happened a few months ago, which is maybe one of the most sophisticated things we've ever seen, where they got into the supply chain and were able to do something very, very unique and powerful, and impacted most of the companies and government agencies in North America. It's a very scary thing. And so there's constantly something the one thing about this industry is you don't get a chance to get bored. There's always something you need to respond to and to be able to talk about. And when you're talking to, we've got a lot of customers, and everybody is having similar challenges, whether we're dealing with public sector or private sector, you're all trying to stay ahead of an adversary. And that's the different parts of IT. Maybe you're learning a piece of technology and you're becoming an expert in that, proficient in that, and you're able to maintain it. And but here, not only do you have to do that, but you have to be able to stay in front of somebody who's also constantly adapting and trying to stay ahead of you. So being able to not just be an expert in your domain around your technology, you also stay ahead of someone who's actively trying to work against you and your business. And that's really unique here, that you have to be able to never stop learning, because the threats never stop evolving. So you can never get to that point in your career where you say, okay, I'm good in cybersecurity, now I can stop, because the bad guys aren't stopping. They're evolving as fast or faster than you.
Yeah, it's such an innovative field, and lots of opportunity to continue learning. Now, we mentioned COVID and the change in the number of attacks during COVID. Someone has asked in the chat, actually, so with COVID, is there an opportunity? Are there more opportunities for people to work remotely with your companies? So Neil, I'll go to you first. Oh, I think we can't hear you for some reason. Yeah, still not. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. It looks like you're unmuted. Very odd. Okay. Still nothing? Okay.
Is that better?
Oh, there we go. Yay.
Sorry,
technology.
Yeah, my device has switched around. So yeah, for us, like especially for Western Canada, like we have global offices, but my team is predominantly remote. Like I've got team members that are in, Kelowna, Vancouver, Winnipeg. They're all over the place because, at the end of the day, for us, we're hiring for the right skill set. And a lot of the work can be done remotely, especially for us, for a lot of investigations and incident response. You don't necessarily need to be on site. A lot of the work can be done remotely. So when we're looking for candidates, it's not just looking in a central hub or a particular city. We're really chasing the skill set and chasing the individuals that, can really bring that to the table. Because that's our biggest thing. For us, it's making sure that, the clients get what they need from a skills and capabilities perspective. And so we will pursue that wherever it is, right? So it doesn't really matter. I've got a team member in Lethbridge. We've got team members all over the place, right? And it's really because of those disciplines and skill sets. And remote is not a barrier for us. And I think it's the reality of what's happening nowadays more and more. Because, you can find amazing skills in really weird pockets and populations that, we're happy to work with. We just want to make sure that we can find the best people and kind of work through that process.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more and more of that COVID has made that option more appealing. And some companies have actually declared that they're going completely remote as a result of COVID. And because the technology now is there to support people working remotely, it is actually possible. Eric, we did have there's a specific question for you, but I think we'll deal with that during the Q&A if that's all right. Can you talk about like upcoming roles for people? And I know sometimes in cybersecurity, it seems like on the careers page that there are just senior positions. So if you're new starting out, how do you get in? And Eric, I'll come back to you first if that's all right.
Yeah, sorry, just the first part about what's upcoming. And I think if we look, a few years ago, people started talking about these three mega trends, and one was, One was about being able to be about mobile work. And this was before we really had COVID and we all were technically working mobile, even though we're probably stuck at one spot. But you're still not behind your perimeter, your data center, you're out in the world now. And so there's mobile work, you see digital transformation, which is really the move of applications to the cloud and creating applications in a different manner. And then you see this AI and machine learning trend. So these are the three mega trends that have taken off, and all three of those have a cybersecurity element to them. And if you can latch on to one or all of those, you're probably going to have a pretty long career. You're going to be very relevant almost immediately. And so when we look at just remote work, what it takes now that we're all out here in the world and we're accessing applications that are cloud-based. We're not doing our normal traditional perimeter-based security. We're not behind these walls of firewalls. We're out here connecting through secure portals, whether it's going through firewall somewhere or it's going into the cloud for their security. We're doing security in a totally different way, and we have to protect people that are all around the world, everywhere, to support that remote work. And then everybody's using a new generation of applications that are created in a totally different manner, that need to be secured in a totally different manner than we've secured them traditionally. And then we've got so many threats coming, as Gary talked about, just what he sees at his point for that. But we see this, and it's not just unique to what he's going through, it's everybody seeing this. And what do you do with all those alerts and all that data that's coming in? No person can actually look at them and process those threats. You need to have some sort of AI machine learning level that's going to go and understand those. And I think if you are a new in career and you want to figure out what's hot and where to be, it would be around attaching yourself to one of those three trends. And I think you're going to have probably almost immediate success in your career. You're going to find yourself, you're going to accelerate rapidly, and you're going to be hyper relevant everywhere anywhere you go.
Yeah, very interesting. Bea, I know Fortinet is also hiring tons and tons of people. So are there entry-level positions there for new graduates or
Yes.
people young professionals wanting to transition from another career?
Yeah, so Fortinet is very active in recruiting new grads. I got in as a new grad. This was my first job out of school. So Fortinet as a company is planning on hiring over 600 employees in R&D across all of North America this year.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we have a pretty big office right here in Burnaby. And yeah, they're quite active about recruiting in universities. And there's positions that are meant for new grads. And like the way that I started as an analyst, I actually didn't know anything at all specifically about being a malware analyst. And they had this training program for people that are starting out in AV analysis. And what they were really looking for was people who had some foundation, know a little bit about programming, know a little bit about network science, and then like building upon it. And I found that has been a really great experience for me.
Awesome. And Neil, how about for yourself? Are there entry-level positions at Mandiant?
Yeah, we're still working through the process and developing more and more of those roles in our US offices. We definitely do. We have our summer interns, that whole program, some of the co-op programs as well. In Canada, it's kind of new for us, but this year we're hiring we've actually hired our first two summer interns. So because we've got three big pillars, in terms of our strategic incident response and our red teaming functions. So this year it'll be more for red teaming and for incident response, where we're looking and, working with the different universities and identifying those candidates that, have that kind of acumen that we're kind of looking for, both from a technical and a soft skills perspective. And they're joining the team this year. So we're trying it out. Next year, we're going to be actually growing that program out as well. So right now it's kind of focused on Eastern Canada because there's a larger team out there, but Western Canada, we're going to be doing that soon too. Looking for something very similar. 2 to 3 individuals for that summer intern type of role. And then for the individuals that we do bring into it, we have a very robust intake process, I guess is to describe it, for training, especially for individuals that haven't done incident response. We have just for crash courses, they're 2 to 3 week long courses, very in-depth, 8 to 10 hours a day of incident response, how to do the triage process, artifact generation, all those elements, so that actually can kind of coordinate themselves when they're out in the field as well. So we find it's really important to go through those. So we have very distinct programs depending on which kind of service pillar you fall into, just to make sure that new students and grads have a strong understanding of what they're getting into, and kind of some of the basic skills they're going to need that you probably wouldn't. You get the base pieces for it in university and schooling, but then it's the stuff we've learned in the field, and we kind of help them kind of bring it all together. So we find that's been really beneficial, and we're going to grow that in Canada as well.
That's excellent. I know, because I work in the co-op program, that a lot of our students undergo intensive training when they start their co-op work term. So in addition to their education, they're getting this very specific training from the companies that they're working for, which just helps grow their skills, but it also helps them figure out what it is they want to do with their careers. So I thought I would actually see if we can just jump into one of the questions. It was actually from a previous panel, but I think it actually might be from the previous panel, but I think it might be interesting to hear what you folks have to say. So when you're recruiting, and doesn't matter what school the student has attended, like, does it matter what university they went to or what college they went to, or is that important when you're hiring? Eric, I'll go to you first, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think what the education showed is that you're smart, you've learned how to think, you've learned how to problem solve, and the more you've gone to school, and as you sort of leveled up as you went through school from year to year to year, you've learned how to solve more and more complex problems. You've had to expand your brain, and you've been challenged, and you've met those challenges, and you've also understand technology. It shows, and so I think it's important, but it isn't everything. Whether or not you went to one of the top rated schools, you went to a technical school. I'm looking for someone who's got curiosity. In the end, you got to have technical curiosity. You've got to have a desire to learn and to keep being better. In our job, I want people to not just be curious in technology, but I want them to be curious in their customers, what their customers' challenges are. When you work at a vendor, you've got something. You carry a set of products or solutions that you're responsible for. But what's important is you can't have someone who's just going to go and blab, like, here's a spec sheet and here's what we do and this is why we're good and this is why our competitors are bad. That's not what we want. I want someone who's going to be really curious about our customers, what their challenges are really listening. And I really want to see empathy when I'm going to hire somebody in one of these roles. That's empathy is everything. So, empathy, curiosity, communication, confidence.
Not so much school then, not so much where they went to school.
No, the location of where they went to school, not as important as the person and what they bring.
Okay. Sounds great. And we're going to talk more about sales engineering in the Q&A, but I'd like to go quickly to Neil and then Bea for the same question. Does it matter where someone went to school?
No. Well, I agree with Eric. In terms of the things we're really looking for, we're looking for that emotional intelligence, those soft skills that really round out the technical, because at the end of the day, we can always teach the technical. But those softer skills, that emotional intelligence, the ability to, be able to read the room, where, if we're in investigations, right? It's a very heated time for an organization. The last thing we want is an analyst to go and start to berate the client that they should have done things better because these technical things are not there. It's really that critical thinking and that processing that we really look for. And we even validate that a lot in our interview process, through our case studies and our reviews. How do you actually translate that information, and how do you actually read between the lines and bring that information forward? So we really look and press for those pieces, because that's a big part of what makes for a really well-rounded consultant from our perspective.
Yeah, very good. And Bea, quickly to you, because we're going to move on to our career journey presentation. I think Fortinet, as you said before, is very active, engaging with a lot of different schools. What is your take on that question?
Yeah. So like which school, like it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Just being willing to learn, having a growth mindset. And since you kind of have to be at the cutting edge, like in security, because it's always changing. Like people in the 2000s were looking at 16-bit malware. I'm looking at 32-bit malware, and there's going to be 64-bit, and like it just keeps changing. And like even I mean, like Eric mentioned machine learning, and like I kind of like just I couldn't even imagine what malware would be like if machine learning was being used for like the threats. So have to be able to keep up, and like if it's something that really excites you, then that's what's important.
Very good. Really good points. So my panelists, my private sector panelists, we're going to put you in the green room, if you will, for a little while we hear from our next speaker. And please don't go anywhere, though. We're going to have you come back for our Q&A once we have a chance to hear from Dominic Vogel. So Dominic Vogel, sorry, let me just move my sheet, is a founder and chief strategist at Cyber SC. Dominic holds a proven track record within cybersecurity across multitude of industries, including financial services, logistics, transportation, healthcare, government, telecommunications, and critical infrastructure. Dominic actively participates in the Vancouver security community and is a well-respected cybersecurity expert for appearing on media news outlets across North America and internationally on BBC World News. Dominic is highly regarded as a cybersecurity thought leader and was recently appointed to the BC Provincial Cybersecurity Advisory Committee. Dominic focuses much of his energy on providing strategic security leadership to technology startups and small to mid-sized businesses to proactively solve their cyber risk challenges. He strives to provide practical cybersecurity advice to his clients and actively turning the security consulting world upside down. So big round of applause for Dominic. Dominic, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear what you have to say about your career journey in cybersecurity.
Well, thank you so much, Tara, for the intro. And I do realize I need to shorten my bio. That was painful to hear all that. Like I said, very grateful to be here. And really, I always love sharing my career journey. And for me, even just I'll start with my origin story. And, you know, I'm a bit of a comic book nerd and a toy nerd, as you can see with Buzz and Forky and my son's toys there in the background. But my origin story goes back actually to my high school days, and when I was in grade 11, late grade 11, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with computers. I'm a product of the early 90s, and my dad was a computer science teacher, and we were among the first people to have a home computer and home internet and that type of thing. So I'd say I'm a early wave one millennial, even if my gray beard dictates otherwise. But that's where I knew I wanted to do something with technology. And my dad brought home one day this massive stack of magazines. Microsoft and all the other tech vendors would always send all these free educational magazines. And one day he just plopped it on my bed at home, and he said, "You know what, Dom, there's got to be something here that interests you." And I remember just pouring through all these magazines, and everything was super, super technical. And I thought, nothing was really speaking to me. And then the pile just fell over, and this magazine emerged, and it said Information Security Magazine. And I looked at it, and I thought, what the hell is information security? And I opened it, and that was the only one that I read cover to cover. And it just spoke to me. And I do have it somewhere in the mess that is my house today. I should find it one day, but that's a side story. But that's what inspired me, And when I graduated from high school, I went to Simon Fraser University and studied computer science there. And over the course of my 4-year degree there, the word cybersecurity was uttered once. That was by me asking it in the format of a question. But I did a lot of self-learning about cybersecurity. I knew because of that magazine, I was hooked. And as I was studying my degree, I got a Security Plus certification, and I just started reading all sorts of stuff online, darkreading.com, CISO.com, just kept reading as much as I could about cybersecurity. I was just soaking it all up. I was just enthralled with it. And this is in the early 2000s. And when I graduated from university, it's really hard to talk. I see all these people saying how nice I am. It's really, it's nice. So you should try dealing with my kids all day. Sometimes I get all worn out with them. So this is nice to feel the warmth here. But when I graduated, I knew I wanted to do something in cybersecurity, and I held out. And at that time, entry-level roles for security just did not exist. And I held out. At one point, my mom said, "Well, why don't you consider changing careers?" You know, being the mother that she is, she wanted, to make sure I got a good job out of school. And I said, "No, Mom, I'm going to hold out here." And lo and behold, eventually someone did take a chance on me, and that's something that I always remember. And when I got hired, I asked my boss. I ended up working for a large logistics company near the airport. And I said, "What was it about me? Why did you hire me?" And he said, "Dom, I'm not going to lie." He said, "You were nowhere near qualified to do it. But the thing that really stood out for you was, A, you would do it for cheap. But more importantly, B, was that your passion shone through." He said, "You were the only one who was truly passionate about what you were talking about." He said, "Everyone else was just doing this because they saw it as a rung along, to maybe somewhere else in a career ladder." He said, "You're the only one who was passionate about it. You told me how much you love cybersecurity." And that, like I said, he took a chance on me, and that's something that stuck with me, all the way to where I am today, and why as being close to 15 years now into my career, I love being able to help people who just need someone to believe in them and to take a chance on them. So that's why I love mentoring and being able to help people, So I progressed through my corporate career, and I ended up working my way up to being in charge of cybersecurity at a credit union here. They were too cheap to give me the CISO title, but again, separate diatribe for a separate day. But for all intents and purposes, I was in charge of cybersecurity. And one day after 10 years, I just couldn't tolerate the corporate world anymore. Not sure what it was, but I felt worn down. And it was 6 years ago, this coming August, when it was my anniversary of when I became an entrepreneur. And that to me has been the greatest single source of personal transformation that I've gone through in my entire life. I lived most of my life being someone who was very introverted. I was not someone who had a lot of friends, didn't really believe in investing in relationships. I certainly wasn't a public speaker. I would normally stare at the ground or something. I certainly wouldn't volunteer to speak to a group of individuals. But over the course of the past 6 years, it's challenged me to allow me to challenge every assumption I had about myself, even professionally. I always thought I was a cybersecurity person through and through. That's all I cared about. That's all I did. That was my whole mission. I quickly realized that, to actually be very effective at being a cybersecurity professional, you need to know what's going on around you. Learning about marketing, learning about communications, learning about sales, learning about how to be just a good person. I heard someone earlier mention the word empathy. Being able to be an empathetic leader, being able to be someone who's able to read people and have high level of emotional intelligence. That level of personal transformation was something which I would not have undergone had I not left my corporate job. And that's something where I'm very grateful to be where I am today. And today, you mentioned Terry, I'm someone who loves public speaking. I love speaking to the media, at least locally here in Vancouver. Every time there's a breach, I can usually tell before I even check the news, because my phone rings off the hook from the local media outlets, and so it's something which I personally enjoy, being able to communicate to the general public about cybersecurity in ways that the general public can understand. That's back to my point about skills like communication. Those are things which have become very, very important to me, to be able to communicate in that fashion. And like I said, now I run my own cyber consulting company. We're an advisory company to small and mid-sized organizations. I get to work with amazing people. I get to choose who I get to work with. I get to choose who we get to help, and I get to speak for a living as well. Whether it be being able to volunteer to be able to speak to an amazing group of people like we are this evening, or being able to have paid speaking opportunities as well. That's been the really cool part of my journey. Like I said, it's not just being growing professionally, but growing personally as a person, as an individual. So I could ramble on. I've lost track of how long I've been talking.
No,
so
it's all good.
Do feel free to ask a question.
It's all good. Yeah, I have several. I'm just going, oh, where will I start? So the first thing that caught my attention, though, was your passion. And I think people applying on jobs really miss the boat by not showing their passion and interest in working for a company. And I definitely have seen it with our co-op students. It's not always the most technical student who gets the job. It's the student that really connects with the employer and shows an interest in what they're doing, that gets the job. And how wonderful for that first employer who hired you, who saw the potential in you and recognize that that passion and that energy to learn and willingness to learn would carry you forward. And it did. And even you're showing that passion now in your entrepreneurial work, which is very, very creative because you have to wear all the hats all the time.
It's something, Tara, which and I often get students asking me, oh, what firewall should I specialize in, or what coding language should I learn? I always say, what, I don't really. In my mind, I don't really care. To me, these types of things can be easily learned. Be someone who's if you're a passionate person and passionate about what you do, you can learn that. The technologies change all the time. The stuff I learned 15 years ago, all those things are obsolete now. I could have been an expert in that back then. Who cares now? But being able to be someone who's passionate throughout the course of your career, that'll get you to far greater heights than if you were ever a Palo Alto expert. No offense to any Palo Alto expert.
None taken. In 3 minutes, you're going to have to talk to your Palo Alto colleagues. So we'll just hold on to that. So I do have a question from Cheryl Serpanchi from ICTC. Nice to see you here, Cheryl. So Dom, how do you see the trend for private business needing more cybersecurity trained folks in the near future? And do you recommend training programs for women in STEM? Cheryl's mentioning that she's heard much about We Hack Purple and not sure how recognized those short course sessions are in the industry.
That's a really great question. And Cheryl, hi, it's been a while since we chatted. I always appreciate your awesome energy, and that's such a great question. I look at, it's funny, over the course of 15 years, I've always been someone who's always kept an eye on just the job boards. And I have a lot of close friends who are recruiters, and I'm always picking their brains. And I'm going to say the past 18 months or so, you've seen this noticeable shift where, at least in Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, in Western BC here, you've seen security roles opening up in organizations which never hired before, like whether it be tech startups, whether it be smaller organizations, mid-sized organizations. It seems like everyone is hiring a security analyst or some derivative thereof. Back in my day, it was generally, if you wanted to work in security, it was either for a large financial company, i.e. a credit union, or you did something in healthcare. That was pretty much your only option. So, or that, or BC Hydro, or something in government. There was nothing else. Now it's almost this free for all where everyone is needing that. And what's further maybe depressing isn't the right word, but saddening to the supply demand is that you see these job openings staying open for week after week, month after month. There are more opportunities. There's more demand than there is supply. So I think for anyone who's contemplating a career in cybersecurity or studying cybersecurity, hot diggity dog, like now is the time to. Yeah. I watch a lot of Mickey with my 3-year-old, so that's the language I speak. But now, over I'd say the next 5-10 years, is a really great opening to be going into the career field. And to answer Cheryl's second part of that question around opportunities for women, it's something which I think is so important. And just even anecdotally, one of the first things that I noticed when I became a cybersecurity professional, I remember going to my first conference, and it was in person because we could do that back then. And I remember the first thing that struck me was how many pissed off middle-aged white guys there were there. And the irony is not lost on me. All these years later, I've become a pissed off middle-aged white guy. But there's still so much, as far as it's come from increased diversity and gender diversity in the security workforce. There's still so much room for growth and so much more room for opportunity, and I think it's so incumbent on males more so to remove the barriers to encourage more females to be able to come into the cybersecurity workforce, to actually feel comfortable in the workforce. I see far too many examples with, whether it be with my clients or organizations that I do work with, where I see, if they're in the IT team or security team, maybe there's one female there, but she's often marginalized. I've seen that before, where she'll bring up an item, or she'll bring up a question in a team meeting. Infrastructure manager will shoot her down. Someone else brings it up. It's like the best thing since sliced bread. So I think more so than focusing on necessarily training opportunities for any males in the cybersecurity workforce, I think it's incumbent on them in removing those barriers.
Yeah, very good point. And actually, if you don't mind, Dominic, I'd actually like to move that conversation into the Q&A and welcome back our panelists, our private sector panelists, as we segue into that. So Eric, Bea, and Neil, if you'd like to come on back. And I just have a couple of thoughts about that too. And I absolutely agree with you, Dominic, that it's really all workers, right, have a responsibility for making sure that there's equity in the workplace. And there is one thing that we certainly have noticed at UVic with job descriptions. It really starts with the job posting, that often female candidates, if they see a long shopping list of requirements for a job, and if they don't have like 80% of them, that may not be exactly the right stat, they won't even apply. Whereas a male applicant would apply with actually even fewer qualifications just on the confidence. And, there needs to be more research and study as to why that is, but we certainly are working with employers, helping them rewrite their job descriptions so that they become more neutral in the language and are more inclusive. And I think that's the starting point. Have you seen that as well, Dominic?
Absolutely, and I see that in the professionals that I mentor and coach as well. Someone who I coach, she works for a post-secondary institution in Vancouver, and she was looking to change roles. And very much to your point there, Tara, she felt intimidated. She would see a job description. She's like, I really like the company, I like what it says, but I don't feel like I'm meeting the requirements here. And I see that I would give that potential opportunity to someone else, a male who I'm coaching, or another one, and that mental block doesn't come up in their mind, and their thought process is like, nope, no, I'll apply to that. So it's to your point, Tara. There's so much that needs to be done in terms of truly leveling out the field. Even from something which seems seemingly innocuous as a job description, all the way down in terms of how the sort of the day-to-day comminglings of the co-workers and bosses, and how everything is structured there. So there's so much that needs to be done in terms of truly balancing and harmonizing the workforce. So and that's why I always encourage, especially females, if there's an opportunity that you're truly passionate about, don't dwell too much. I know it's easier said than done. Don't dwell on the laundry list below that. Often that's just HR Googling it, and it's not a true reflection of the actual job anyway. Take that chance and let your passion shine through.
Yeah, I think that's really good for all applicants to know. Now, Bea, I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but as a female working in this field and through your application process, how was that for you with your male counterparts?
Yeah, that thing that you mentioned about looking at an application, seeing like, oh gosh, these 5 things that I don't have, like definitely guilty of doing that. And it's hard to check it. Like I didn't even realize I was doing it until my comm prof mentioned it in class, and I was like, oh yeah, I do that. And like, it's like, even like as my career progresses, it's something that I still kind of struggle with, like when it comes to asking for a raise, asking for a promotion. Yeah. So like it's a process. It's really great to find allies, to find mentors, and to also kind of like do some internal processing to kind of reshift your mindset. Like, you deserve to be in this field as much as these people do. And that should be enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And Neil, if I could go to you next, I know that a lot of companies are implementing diversity, policies and programs. And we certainly at the university get approached by companies all the time saying, give us your female students, like we want to see their applications. But, so many companies are doing this. And the female students, they want to be hired because they're the best for the job, not because of their gender, right? So it's a very difficult topic. So what are your thoughts on this, Neil?
Yeah, like it is challenging. We don't actually see as many female applicants as we'd like to see. We've been very fortunate in the last little while. We've been able to hire on several females to the Canadian team, and they've been amazing, like such strong contributors to the team. But as part of that, we're trying to work with them to better figure out how do we actually grow that, almost how do we almost like we're looking at it to say, how do we make ourselves more appealing in some respects, right, to that same kind of group? Not that we're just targeting one particular group, but really just how do we broaden the appeal, right? Because, like the comments before, security has been fairly male dominated, but, sometimes that only gives you individuals that give you sometimes a very linear view of things, right? And we like to broaden out that experience, broaden out the perspectives. The diversity just makes a team stronger at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So I know FireEye a couple of years ago launched the Elevate program, for growing women leaders in security, and really kind of growing that program. And we're really trying internally to implement that further out into, to the comments, like the job descriptions, make them almost somewhat more generic, but more approachable in a lot of ways.
Yes,
just so that we can get people, so we can get people to apply and start the dialogue. The dialogue is where we start to figure out where a person actually sits, where the strengths are. So there's a lot of work that's happening, but yeah, I agree. When you look at a lot of job descriptions that are out there, even today, I look at them, I don't know if I'd ever apply to some of those, right? Because they've got so many requirements that they just don't make any sense, right? So why would somebody, fresh out of university even want to approach something like that, right? So we try to even look at ours. We don't even list certifications in our job postings anymore, right? We just look at, what general experience, and we just want to get the dialogue going, and then we'll kind of try to work through the process. But that's how we're trying to almost simplify the process, I guess, so that it kind of just levels the playing field is kind of what we're trying to do, so that we can increase the mix and diversity as part of that.
Yeah, very good. Eric, I don't know if you want to address that question. We did have a question for you earlier on about how a person gets into sales engineering. Like and this actually, the sales part of cybersecurity is actually important to all of you, because you're in private sector and you have, at the end of the day, you have a product that you're trying to sell. So, if someone is interested, and we certainly do have people who have technical skills who are very much interested in the business side, and merging those two things, love of business and having that those technical chops to be able to talk to a client about what their needs are and assess their needs. So if you were, looking to get into sales engineering, Eric, how would you start that?
Yeah, we do quite often end up hiring people that in a sales engineer when it isn't their first job. Usually your first job out of in the industry is not in sales engineering generally, unless you work for a company that has a good program where they have an associate program where you end up sort of being a shadow of someone who is maybe more senior, and then you can slowly work your way up through by giving more and more responsibilities. But in the end of the day, we're putting people in front of customers to routinely. So quite often what we end up looking for when we're hiring people who are new in career is we're looking for someone who has that curiosity, that they're going to ask questions, they can communicate well. And when you're interviewing them, you're as someone who's new, end up interviewing them maybe not for where they are today, but where you think they could be. So you're looking more for that potential, and that potential is really going to, and in sales engineer is going to be that communication side of things, and how they present themselves, how they listen. And one of the things I always like to have is, so when you interview somebody and you tend to ask them a bunch of questions, and at the end you say, do you have any questions of me?
Right.
And then so sometimes they're like, oh no, everything was good. Then I'm like, then I know that person probably wouldn't be a good systems engineer or sales engineer, depending where you're working at, what they call them. I want someone who's going to be engaging me, asking questions, has done their research on our company, on the industry, has talked to people. And I quite often ask, who have you talked to? Who do you trust? What have you learned about us? And I ask a whole bunch of questions like that to figure out and get them talking back to me. And then when they start talking back to me and asking me more questions, then I know that they're going to be a curious person. I put them in front of a customer, and they're going to be asking questions of that customer and being curious and being engaged. And I want to have someone who can have that conversation, listens, responds, and once is a sponge and just absorbing everything, and then brings it back around to me again. That's really more important, because I don't want someone who's just going to walk into a customer and put up a slide deck and say, "Here's what our thing does. Click through them. Any questions?" By. I want someone who's going to go and the first question is going to be, tell me about what your challenges you have, what you're trying to solve, and then really understand what the customer is doing, what's important to them, what their business challenges are, what we're trying to solve, and then you can start talking about a solution. Maybe get on a whiteboard. Quite often, I'd like to have people. It's harder to do during COVID, but quite often I have someone whiteboard a solution. Tell me about something technical. Explain something technical that you've done, whether it was a class project or something they did in a previous job, and I asked them to get on the whiteboard and explain something to me, and a technical concept. It doesn't have to be about my company. It can be about anything that they're comfortable with, and I want to see how they communicate technical solutions to somebody else, and that teaches me a lot about them.
Yeah, very much so. The interview process, well, we could have a whole webinar just on interviews for sure. And I have a lot to say about those. So Dom, you had mentioned that you coach some people. Do you coach them for like preparing for an interview in cybersecurity? Is that something that you do?
Yeah, so I tend to coach cybersecurity professionals that are very early on in their journey. Okay. So they're trying to either they just start off their career and or they're looking at taking that next level, maybe from being an analyst to being into managerial position. I mentor and coach a lot of first-time security managers who often struggle, having been in a purely technical domain. Now all of a sudden they're in charge of people, and they're not trained in terms of things like leadership, how to gauge the emotional aptitude of their teams, so in that type of thing. So that's something which I enjoy doing, because it's often A, not taught, and B, for most security people, they struggle with it because the majority of their focus is often on the technical side of things and not necessarily on the people or the leadership side of things.
Yeah, very much so. I was actually talking to someone in the last week about this, that when you get to a certain point in your career, you think that, the most obvious next step is to become the manager, but sometimes you move up out of your strengths, like, and out of your passions too. So you do see that sometimes where someone moves up into a managerial position and they really struggle. They don't have the skills to do it. They're not happy doing it. And sometimes they just go back to doing what they were doing, which gave them a lot of satisfaction. And again, that word passion, right? That they're passionate about. So, and we heard from the previous panel too, about the importance of, being open to those opportunities that come your way. And every one of you have talked about, sort of it's not a linear path that you've taken in your career. It's very circuitous, and you've had help along the way, but you've been continually upgrading your skills as you're doing it. Neil, is there anything that you would like to add to that about even your own experience?
Yeah, like I think it's that passion, that curiosity, right? That you kind of build and kind of grow and develop, right? Everyone's going to have a bit of their own path, I think, in terms of what they have interest in, but I really suggest, exploring it. Because the thing with security also is that there's so many different pockets inside of it. There's so many different things you can start to do. Sometimes what's not even relevant today becomes really relevant tomorrow, right? So it's important to really kind of keep an open mind to the different things, explore different areas. We're seeing the industry changing all the time, right? We're seeing more and more focus on application security, the need for security engineers. Cloud security is going to, it's just gets bigger and bigger and more dominant over time. And that's going to continue to evolve and change, right? But I would say that, if there's an opportunity, there's something you want to explore, try it, like lean into it and see if there's, where it kind of takes you, because you'll be surprised, right? Because a lot of innovation comes from, people trying something new, stitching different ideas together, and then suddenly it's a new product at a different company or something, right? You never know where it's going to go. So yeah, I really suggest leaning into those interests for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of, some of the people who are in school right now will be working in jobs that don't even exist today, right? Because everything is changing so quickly. So we have just a few minutes left before we're going to move on to the Educational Pathways panel. So I would like to go through each of you. So you each have 1 minute. Is there anything that you would like to say to the people on the call? So Bea, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Okay. Guess I want to say consider like your other interests as well, and like you never know like what kind of things might end up being useful in your career. Like I was really interested in embedded systems and photography from like a computational side, and like I'm finding that I'm using kind of the same like algorithmic thinking with what I'm doing in my work. And then you just get like all of these like mixtures of ideas. So like it's sometimes it's easy to kind of just get really laser focused into one thing, but it's also good to kind of keep your mind open for other things.
I think that's really great advice.
Yeah.
Dom, I'm going to come back to you for that same question. Anything that you would like to leave our participants with as we wind up this panel?
Yeah, I would sum it up with saying lead with kindness, lead with compassion, lead with empathy. Those qualities there will illuminate your path to success.
Very good. Very good. Those are great words. And Eric, for yourself?
Yeah, I would say, and I think this is maybe a bit of a theme, is that of today is that everybody should know there's a lot of people out here who are willing to help you and support you have success in this industry. When you're out and you meet people or you're starting your first job, build as many connections as you can, meet as many people, join as many groups, go to B-sides, go to every single event possible, and just meet people and be curious when you meet people. And you never know where that's going to take you. You'll learn more about other people, other jobs, other parts of this industry, and it'll other people will raise you up in this industry. It's a very, very, very supportive.
Yes.
But part of it takes you putting yourself out there and making those connections.
Yeah, very good. Very good. And Neil, for yourself, any parting words for our participants?
Yeah, very similar. Attend events, like this, build your network, participate in different kind of events, capture the flags, get different types of exposure. Your network will become really powerful.
Yes.
That those connections will become really, really powerful for you. And kind of get your hands dirty, like try different things. There's a lot of online sources, for if you've got a passion for penetration testing or something like that, go try, hack the box or find different solutions. Just really try to get some experience and exposure, because that lends itself to its own passion, right? If you've got the drive to try those things and explore what you can and can't do today, those are things that really lend itself to both identifying new passions, but also showing for employers or future employers the depth of where you've kind of gone and where you try to explore on your own. So I'd say, yeah, go out there and meet people and kind of get your hands dirty and try different things for sure.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And often employers are looking for personal projects when they're interviewing candidates. So you sometimes don't have a lot of work experience, but if you can demonstrate through the things that you've worked on in your own time, it shows your passion, shows your creativity and your initiative in teaching yourself how to do something and doing it on your own. So we did have another question come in the chat, but we're not going to have time to answer it during this panel. I would encourage our panelists, if you're willing, to pop your LinkedIn URLs in the chat so that if any of the participants want to reach out with follow-up questions, that they're able to do it. Really would like to thank you for your time today and support of this event, and hope that you'll stay with us as we go through the Educational Pathways panel, which is one last panel that we're just going to start up right now. So thank you so much, and hopefully you'll stay with us to the end. Great, thanks so much. So it's my pleasure now to introduce you to Kimberly Dre. So Kimberly is going to introduce the next section and the next panelist for our Educational Pathways. So over to you, Kimber.
Thanks, Tara. Thank you for having me. My name is Kimberly Dre, and you can call me Kimber. I'm a Senior Information Security Analyst at University of Victoria, and I'm so happy to be here and to be invited to facilitate this conversation with our 4 panelists. Looking forward to hearing about how our local career development teams are supporting those interested in the field and what has helped our two new cybersecurity professionals move into this space. Hopefully some of you had a chance to squeeze in your dinner or some snacks. We were allotted about a half hour to this, so hopefully we can keep it on time. We're now going to hear our panelists respond to their thoughts and experiences about educational pathways into cybersecurity careers. After a brief introduction to each of the panelists, I'm going to ask each of them 1 to 2 questions. So I think we should probably get started. How's everybody doing? Smiles. Yeah, good. I know it's a long day for everybody, so I appreciate everybody's participation. Please do drop any of your questions in there, but I'm going to hold them to the end after we go through some of our questions here. So I'm going to start off with Lindsay here. That's okay. Are we moving the speaker to the front? Lindsay Johnson is a district vice principal for the Greater Victoria School District Pathways and Partnerships Career Education Department. She's worked as a teacher, administrator in the school in ST61 for 16 years and is passionate about supporting students in discovering who they are through their career education, strength-based lens. Lindsay leads ST61's Pathways and Partnership team in a K-12 environment, supporting students through hands-on, culturally responsible and social emotional learning focused opportunities. And this is the question that I have for Lindsay. What would be an interesting study stream that would prepare students best for a career in information security in high school?
Thanks, Kimber. Hi, everyone. So yes, I'm Lindsay Johnson, and I get to represent the high school K-12 environment tonight. So I am not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm thrilled because I'm learning alongside all of you tonight, and I've heard such incredibly important messages that I really hope not just our high school participants tonight are hearing, but all people are hearing, because I'm going to repeat probably a lot of those messages, but I think that they're really important to hear. I just first also want to just thank ISACA Victoria for all their time, energy, and effort to put on this event. It's not every day and it's not every industry who reaches out to us as a school district to say, how can we help? How can we connect with students? So it's exciting and we feel really grateful. As anyone knows who's put on events like this, it takes a lot of time and energy. So I just wanted to make sure I gave a big thank you to everybody involved tonight and everyone's time. So I have this really awesome job. And for the 21% of students who are here tonight who are in high school, you're probably aware of some of the opportunities available through our Pathways and Partnerships department. And really our goal is to not have students learn what they want to do, but more who they want to be. And I think that you're hearing that a lot from a lot of the panelists, that it's not the what, it's trying to figure out what are your strengths and your interests and your passions, and how can you then find a career pathway that fits those things for you. So in ST61, we have an amazing group of educators, both at the district level to help coordinate events, but also in each of our high schools. We have career centers that are staffed with educators there to help students. So if you're not from ST61, don't fear. You have the same types of educators in your school and in your district. And we have the same goal. It's to create amazing opportunities for students to be exposed to different career pathways and actually to be able to experience them. Because what we know, and the research actually tells us, that students leaving high school are 25% less likely to be NEET, which means not in education, employment, or training. So 25% less likely to be that if you participate in events that have to do with career education. And the students in high school who are here today, this is one of those events, to be listening and learning, to be able to start to understand and shape your ideas moving forward, to again, learn who you are, to see if that connects. So in high schools, you have so many opportunities available to you, and I really hope you'll take advantage of them. So one of the things is just technology courses in your high schools. All of you have courses that you can take, and there's educators that teach those courses who have their own sets of skills and their own pathway that they can share with you. We host career fairs that you can talk to people in the cybersecurity industry to ask specific questions, one day face to face, I hope. University events where you can ask different universities, what are some pathways in cybersecurity or other areas of technology? ISACA Victoria does springboards with us. They've done them in the past, just like this, where you can take part and talk to people in industry and learn by going to events or things like this. Work experience in high school is really big as well. If you have an interest, you can go to your career center and say, is there some way that I can get some work experience and get out in industry? And I think the message you should all really take to heart tonight is that all of the people, especially in cybersecurity, are super keen and eager to help. If you reach out, I bet they would be able to provide you with some guidance around work experience or just doing some volunteering or learning some skills. We have partnerships with universities and colleges, and for the people here at the conference and the panelists who've been out of high school for a little while, it's pretty amazing the opportunities available. So you can be taking what we call dual credit courses while you're still in high school. And actually there's some people, I've seen their names in the chat who actually have taken part in some of these. So it's while you're in high school, you can take a post-secondary course or program, and you do that and your tuition's paid for by the school district. So it's a way for you to be exposed to technology and try some things out while you're in high school, getting your education while it's free, because most of us will know that once you leave high school, it's really hard to find any education that is free. And then just wanted to speak quickly to High Tech U. If you're in high school and you haven't connected with High Tech U yet, I really suggest you check it out. So High Tech U is a wonderful partner of ours through UVic's Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. And they put on incredible events for kids to talk to each other who have a similar interest in technology, to hear from industry, to participate in challenges, and when, again, COVID's not happening, to get up on campus and learn. So those are just some of the things when you're in high school that you're able to take part in. So I just really, if you haven't ever visited your career center before, go there and talk to them, have a conversation, tell them who you think you want to be, what are your skills, interests, values, and if cybersecurity is for you, they probably have some great suggestions for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Sounds like there's wonderful programs available for the students in the greater district. I did want to touch base on a little comment here when we talked about the study streams. I know back in the day, we would lead them towards computer science courses or potentially the maths area. Right now, I'm sure there's still IT courses in the school, maybe some programming languages. Do you get asked about whether or not those are preferences, or do you find that graduation requirements may restrict their opportunities to take courses that would apply, perhaps?
Yeah, it's a good question. Students are required to take electives when they're in high school, but you're right, sometimes it does feel like there's not a lot of room when you're trying to make sure that you have the post-secondary requirements to get into some of the larger research universities. But I think what I've seen is that the students who find a passion and they're interested in technology, usually they're able to find and take those specialized courses for them that allow them to really dive in. And again, if they aren't able to do that in their high school, then we have dual credit opportunities for them to do that outside of their high school, whether it's through Camosun or UVic. But it's pretty amazing. Our tech teachers in our high schools, they really work super hard to, with, of course, the technology that public schools have access to, they really do a lot of their own training and learning to be able to provide a wide array of courses for students based on their interests and what pathway they might like to take.
Thank you. I surprised you with that story. Thank you. Okay, now we have Iman Borgaba. She's a co-op coordinator in the Engineering and Computer Science Co-op. She works with the Masters of Engineering and Telecommunications and Information Security program and software engineering students. She earned her PhD in computer science from McMaster University. She has a master's degree in computer science and a bachelor's degree in computer science and management. She has postdoctoral experiences, including NSERC, BF. And for those who don't know what that is, that's the National Sciences Engineering Research Council Visiting Fellowship Program. Iman remains active in academia, research and development, and she's eager to speak to us tonight about this question here. I think many of you have mentioned this earlier on in the panel about the movement away from technical skills. So I'd like to have Iman speak to what soft skills or personal attributes someone in the information security field need to be successful.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kimberly, for this nice introduction. So just to give you a little overview, I do work, as Kimberly mentioned, with software engineering students and also with the MTIS student, the Masters of Telecommunication and Information Security. We launched this program as the first professional program at UVic in 2015, and it has been a very successful program. So I do work with students, making sure they can get a co-op, and most of the time we do have like 100% placement of those co-op students for the MTIS program. So Shruti is one of my students, a recent grad, and she's going to talk later on about her experience. When I work with employers looking for co-op opportunities, there is probably, I would say, a new trend. So before, most of the employers, they were looking more for technical skills, which is not really the case right now. Most of our employers are looking for students with soft skills. So with that, what I mentioned and what I would like to highlight is some of the skills that some of the panelists already talked about. Probably communication is one of the most important skills that most of the employers are looking for. Why is that? So of course, the employers are looking always for a good fit, and they are looking for someone who's being able to communicate with them. So not having like the smartest idea would be enough, but you should be able to communicate those ideas. Not only that, but also whatever role you will be working, say a software developer or a QA or software tester, any role that you're going to be having as probably a full-time or a co-op student, you're not going to only be interacting with your team and your manager, but very likely you're going to be gathering requirements from the customers, and you need like that communication piece. So this is one of the soft skills that most of the employers are looking for. Also, most of the employers are looking for students with strong leadership skills. So they would like to have someone who's being proactive, taking initiative. I usually get feedback from the employers that even students as a co-op, they're more than welcome to share their ideas. Like they don't consider the student as a co-op student, but they consider them as a colleague, as a full-time employee. And they always encourage the student like to share their feedback, don't shy away from bringing their ideas to the table. So probably those, I would say, the most soft skills that most of the employers are looking for. But also, as you know, for both like high school student and university student, now everyone is looking for a student with strong critical thinking skills, problem solving, having someone who's thinking outside of the box. And to help you with that, I think strengthening your soft skills, and probably when you are applying to job, it will be good like to highlight those skills and include everything you've been working on. Say, for instance, you've been working on programming or coding, and it could be even at the personal project level. So those would be things you can include. For instance, involvement in extracurricular activities. This is also something that many of the employers are looking for. What are you doing like out of school? Like you are a smart student, that's great, but what are you doing? Debating or sports or anything? What are your hobbies? Like it's very interesting. Once I was talking to an employer and I said, when you are hiring, what you are looking for in the resume? And he's like, hobbies. What is the interest of the student? So I'm like, okay, that's good to know. So the employers, when they're hiring you, they are really want to have a picture of you. So make sure to highlight those soft skills and extracurricular activities, hobbies, interests, and of course, if you're going to apply, say, to a technical job, if you have like a GitHub or if you have a LinkedIn, then it will be good like to add those to your application.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. The well-rounded individual is what we're looking for. Okay, next up we have Shandula Kodituwaku. Recently completed his Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at UVic. He has a passion for cybersecurity and developed his expertise at his first co-op with University of Victoria Systems. Shortly after, he completed several other co-ops with companies such as the BC Infrastructure Management Corporation, Royal Bank of Canada, and the BC Pension Corporation. Shandula was also a member of a UVic team that emerged victoriously at a national cybersecurity contest. These hands-on experiences secured him a full-time opportunity at Deloitte, a top consulting company, where Shandula will be starting in the fall in 2021. And the question that I have for Shandula is, what advice do you have for students who may be considering a career in information security, and what are your lessons learned?
Thank you for the introduction, Kimber, and hello, everyone. If there's something that took me this far in the field, it was my curiosity and passion. And I know many panelists mentioned this today, and it's actually true. So having passion and curiosity definitely makes it easier to navigate the field. You'll find yourself connecting with like-minded professionals that share similar interests. You'll find yourself trying to do everything you can to learn different technologies and concepts. And you'll also find yourself, giving time to go out there into the community and volunteer, right? That's important as well. So the point is that you enjoy the journey and that you're happy with your accomplishments, right? You got to be happy with what you are doing. And also the passion and the curiosity sort of will help you navigate through any hardships that you might face along the journey, because you will always be motivated. And so another thing that I wanted to mention was that we all know, so technology is rapidly evolving, right? It changes every second, it changes every minute. So you have to keep on learning, right? We call it continuous learning. So what I used to do, what I like to do is I like to stay up to date with the latest trends in cybersecurity, like follow the latest news. I know during interviews, right, hiring managers usually like to ask questions such as like you give an example of the latest trends, right? Give an example of the latest data breaches. So it sort of helps to be up to date on the latest trends. And you can also learn from those incidents that happen on the news, right? You can see what happened to this particular company, and you can sort of go through those lessons and see what mistakes they made. Maybe so what can you learn from them, right? So it really helps to be up to date. And in terms of gaining knowledge, so there are many things you can do, right? So one thing is following online courses, attending webinars. So sans.org is a good resource that I use. So they have some good courses that you can follow. They have some webinars that are pre-recorded. They have them daily. So you can go and rewatch any webinars you missed. And they are great ways to improve your knowledge. And so you can also try taking certifications. They're pretty good as well if you want to gain some extra knowledge on specific areas. I often like to attend conferences, and it's one of my favorites because you get to meet like-minded professionals, right? And they'll be able to provide you guidance. They might be able to even help you find jobs as well. So that's something that you should look up to. I did some competitions as well during my school life. They are a great way to contribute to the community. They are great ways to work on problems that exist in the industry, and you can also build on team working skills, right? Like everyone mentioned, it's important to have good team working skills as well, not just technical skills. However, based on my experience, one thing that you should keep in mind is that certifications and theory alone are not enough. One of the best ways to get some professional experience are through co-ops and internships. But the thing is, again, it's based on my personal experience. Applying for internships and co-op opportunities can themselves be competitive because there are a lot of students, right? And as a student, I was in a similar situation, right? So what I did was I planned ahead. So if you are looking for co-op opportunities, right, or job opportunities, maybe 8 months from now, or maybe a year from now, plan ahead. And what I did was I looked at the current job roles available in the market. So, go on LinkedIn, find a role that you're really interested in, right? See what skills they're looking for. So let's say they're looking for a student with experience running, let's say, a vulnerability scan, right? Using a tool like Nessus. So what I would do is I would set up a home lab, right? I love home labs. So in my case, I set up a home lab. I spun up some virtual machines, installed Nessus, and I learned how the tools work. And now I would include it in my resume. And if the hiring manager asks me, so, tell me about your experience with this particular software, I would say I built a home lab and I, ran these tools. I did X, Y, Z. And hiring managers usually like to see students taking that initiative, right? It shows their passion, right? And you're doing something more than just trying to take online courses or just trying to learn theory. And it really makes a difference. So something else that I wanted to mention was, so the field is huge, right? There are so many different domains in cybersecurity, and there's a lot you can learn. And as a student, you have to follow other commitments as well, right, with school. So you might find yourself getting overwhelmed because you have to learn all these different skills and technologies. Well, if that happens, well, take a break, right? Select 1 or 2 areas that you're really interested in and try to master those 2 areas. Once you do that, you can move on to the next, right? So that way you sort of have a plan. You're taking a step-by-step approach, right? And everything will start to make sense, right? So take it easy, have a plan, and then, you'll be able to climb up that ladder and it'll make a difference. And I've seen that happen. One more thing about home labs. I'm sorry if I'm taking a lot of time.
That's great.
So home labs will also give you some good skills. They'll give you some good networking skills because you have to connect all these different components together, right? And for cybersecurity, it's good to have some networking skills, right? Because that's how everything is connected. You learn a lot of troubleshooting skills as well, because systems are going to fail when you install software, right? You'll have to read all this documentation, so you'll get a lot of good skills that way, and all of these small things will add up to make you into a well-rounded individual. So that's sort of the experience that I wanted to share with everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we have a little bit of extra time here, I think. Maybe we'll get another question in. Shruti. Shruti Ramesh is a recent MTIS graduate and incoming cybersecurity analyst at Deloitte in Vancouver. She starts her position in June. I did want to point out just a little observation. Both Shandula and Shruti didn't necessarily show all of their successes, but they're both known for all of their extra work in professional development activities and taking courses and getting certificates, building their skill sets. It's very impressive work, and I wanted to point that out, even though they don't necessarily brag about it. Okay, so here we are. Question for Shruti. How can students get more information about the field of information security if their career advisors or counselors may not be aware of the profession or some of the roles in the profession?
Yep. Thanks for the introduction, Kimberly. So yeah, to answer your question, as a graduate in InfoSec, I did receive a lot of support from my professors and seniors in the university. However, some other ways that I connected with people outside of this bubble is through LinkedIn. And it is a very powerful tool for budding professionals and students like us to network and connect with people in the industry. And speaking from my own experience and reiterating what many others said, cybersecurity is a very welcoming community, and almost everyone is willing to help out and guide students. I remember the time when I was looking for a co-op opportunity a year ago, and I had reached out to Gary and Dominic here, among many others, and they were very nice enough to post the requirement on the timeline or point me to someone who is hiring. So yeah, all you need to do is to reach out and connect, be it with experts in the field or someone whose career path you aspire to have, or fellow cyber enthusiasts. And yeah, having said that, do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll drop in my ID in the chat box sometime later. Other than this, it's a good idea to join any of the professional associations or organizations such as ISACA and many others. They often have conferences, meet and greets, trainings, and info sessions that just like how we have here, that you can really make use of and get to know people from different walks of cybersecurity. Other than this, there are also several meetup groups that you can be a part of. One that I can recall and I'm a part of is the Women in Cybersecurity Victoria group. I'm sure you can find many others as well. So basically, it's a group for women contributing in IT and cybersecurity fields, and they often have monthly virtual meetings which you can join and connect with them for career guidance or just chat and support each other. So that's a very nice thing to have. Yeah, other than this, subscribe to various security forums and blogs that can keep you posted on what is currently happening in the field. My personal favorite is Krebs on Security. I'm sure there are many more. So yeah, I think I've covered the sources that I wanted to share. I'll be happy to connect on LinkedIn if you guys needed some help on any specific topics.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. I'm wondering if we have anybody in the audience that would like to ask questions of our panelists. Do we have anything in our chat or Q&A? No questions? For some of our, well, maybe some of our existing panelists, but I'm thinking also of some of our previous panelists. The few of you have mentioned the idea of taking courses and getting involved in groups and whatnot. There's a little bit of a trend for some gamification of your skill sets and also micro certifications. And I'm wondering if there's anyone that have any passion about that or any comment on those two items. Do we think that capture the flag type activities, for example, is a good way to improve your skill set for cybersecurity?
Yeah, capture the flag events are definitely helpful. So I think one of the panelists in the previous section mentioned as well. So there are many online sources like hackthebox.eu where you can participate and get that hands-on experience, and it really helps, right? So it's easy to learn, right? As I mentioned, it's easy to go online and read some theory, but when you do these capture the flag events, right, you're forcing your mind to think and be smart and find the different ways, right, to connect all those things together. So capture the flag events definitely help. You can also download, vulnerable machines like DVWA, Metasploitable onto your machines and then start poking at it, right? So those are like the small capture the flag kind of events that you can do. But yeah, no, it definitely helps. It definitely helps.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any comment on those two items? Or any other questions for our panelists? We have a couple minutes left. Alrighty, it sounds like everybody's ready to end up for the night. Tara, I'm going to hand it over to you to close us up.
Very good. Actually, just as you were doing that, Kimber, there was another question that came in. And I don't know if Chandala and Shruti can answer this or not. So as an enthusiast in the cybersecurity field, how do you navigate the field when there are so many certifications? How do you pick a path, as it can be overwhelming when you want to learn so much? And I guess because you're just starting, everything is in front of you, right? Like there would be so many different certifications. And Gary kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but Chandala, what do you think about that?
Again, I think it all depends on on you as a person, right? What do you like, right? What are you most passionate about? Are you interested in something like penetration testing, right? Or are you interested in, being like a security analyst, right? So they have different skill sets. And I think it all depends on what you like. So you'll have to choose something that you're really passionate about, and that will help you learn more. But I think Gary might, have a good answer for this. So I'll let Gary answer this.
Look, I'm always just interested in helping. I warned folks early on about tackling some of the certifications that are meant for folks that have been in this area for some time. It's not to say you can't do it, but they are certainly challenging, and it's not uncommon for existing security professionals to fail them on the first attempt. So we would not want you to do anything that will dissuade you from pursuing an exciting career in cybersecurity. So it's good to warm up with one of the entry-level ones. So a Security Plus on your resume may not be the thing that gets you hired, but it's certainly a good warm up for some of those future certifications. But I totally agree with what Shangela says. You kind of have to understand early on whether you want to go like a vendor agnostic route. Like again, I keep picking on the CISSP as a good example of that. But certainly, I mean, there's whole reams of certifications around Palo Alto and other technologies that you could choose to pursue as well. And just to differentiate, whereas some of these certifications have a good cross section, we say that the area of security is a mile wide and an inch deep. Like that's what the exams will cover because it's such a broad area. They try to tackle everything. There's some other ones like the OSCP, which is much more hands-on applied and really getting fantastic kind of credibility for testing your technical chops. But if you're not into that, then pursue one of the others, right? So there are quite a few out there, but if you want something very specific, because that's what I'm gathering in the question, then I see the question for the CEH. Okay, fine, you asked for it. I'm going to tell you exactly the deal here. So there's two routes that you go. You either do the route that ends you with a CISSP. That means start with something simpler and work up there. Or there is one other exception to my earlier rule. Remember when I said that the CISSP, CISM, CISA are what employers are looking for most heavily request? There's an exception, and thank you for redirecting me there. And that is for penetration testing. So with the penetration testing, they are looking more for a CEH, a GPEN from SANS, or OSCP, or as you said, the CEH. That's the one exception. And those are really interesting and exciting areas to explore and some challenging exams to write. So I would say if you're interested in anything that looks like red teaming or pen testing, that something like the Certified Ethical Hacker, which is a CEH, is definitely worth it. There is a reason around this. I forgot one as well, the LPT, Licensed Penetration Tester. And it's really important because when you're going to go and do these jobs that could cause harm, folks are going to want that additional level of certainty that you are trained in some way and you are capable. And I'm going to tell you a secret for those folks who have stuck around toward the end. Do you know one of the reasons why employers will hire people with a Cisco like CCNA, or in this case, like the CEH? It's because should you happen to make a mistake and you take down the entire network, that the employer isn't left sitting there, the hiring manager, saying, you know, I felt really good about that person. I went with my gut, as opposed to pointing at the fact that, look, they were Cisco certified. They were trained in this area. This is like, you know, Cisco should wear some of this blame. So just a colorful example of one of the reasons why certifications, employers may look to them, but every person who has worked in and around folks with certs has run across people that have the certification and don't have any of the knowledge or experience to back it up. And the MCSE is a good example of a cert that got really bad reputation for exactly that, such that it got so diluted and watered down that people would hide it on their resume rather than declare it proudly. So I hope that answers some of your questions about certifications. Certainly on the link that we shared about jumpstarting your career in security, it does talk about these certifications, but again, all opinions expressed here are my own. I have some pretty charged ones around certifications, but hey, I'm also qualified to speak on them because I've written all of these exams. I have the, although I let it expire, the CISM, CISA, and CISSP, and about 14 others.
Very good. Well, thank you, Gary. And thank you for that question. Yeah, we might have got more than we bargained for when we asked you that question. There is another question there, but that's for you, Gary, and I'll let you answer that yourself in person. So thank you so much to our participants for staying with us for this 3 hours to enjoy this really interesting conversation. I know I've learned a lot about cybersecurity and the different career paths, and this would not be possible without our sponsors. So again, a shout out to Fortinet, Palo Alto Networks, FireEye, and TELUS for this. For me personally, you know, I've met a lot of our panelists for the first time, and it's been my pleasure getting to know you and learning about what you do. And hopefully next year, we're going to be doing this all in person. At this point in time, I would like to turn the floor over to the ISACA Victoria Chapter President Josh Stevens, who has a few final words. And before we do that, I just want to remind everybody that when our participants, when you close out of Zoom, you are going to be redirected to that survey link and you have a chance to win one of 5 $100 gift certificates courtesy of ISACA. So thank you, and over to you, Josh.
So do the survey, because it's actually courtesy of our sponsors, really. So I just wanted to give a huge thank you again to Palo Alto Networks, to Fortinet, to FireEye Mandated, to TELUS for taking the time and for being willing to support the community. And we're truly grateful. I mean, it's a huge thank you for you guys, and a huge thank you to the panelists. Everybody did a wonderful job, and I think that the late afternoon and into the evening went off very, very well, and I learned a lot. And I hope those of you that attended both on the panelist side and as attendees, I hope you're able to take away something from this. And the offer is there again from any of us. If you need anything, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And you know, we're here to help and here to support you. I wanted to give a thank you to the very large number of folks on the ISACA Victoria side that took their time to make this happen, because it didn't just happen really quickly, and I certainly couldn't have pulled it off at all by myself. I turned up to some meetings and did a thing or two, but I tell you, between Venki and Stan and Salome and Richard and Chandula, you rock, and you did a really, really good job. And huge thanks to the board, but special thanks to those folks, because they dedicated countless hours, and to Tara for you and Bonnie. Tara, you did just a wonderful job emceeing this and facilitating it. Kimber, you were wonderful. Lindsay and Bonnie from SD61, thank you very much. Tara, and then Dr. Lee wasn't here, I don't think, today, but did a lot for us. And so without these people giving their time to us, this couldn't have happened. And we're truly grateful, and thank you. And like you said, Tara, hopefully next year we can do this in person at the university, and then we can give you snacks and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So it's really all about the snacks as far as I'm concerned. But I promise you, we're gonna have good snacks next year, and you wouldn't have to sneak out and eat cereal like I did at about 6 o'clock because we'll be eating sandwiches. So thank you everybody for taking the time today. We're very grateful for you, and with that, I'm gonna wrap it up.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much.